Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the February 2021 Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review virtual meeting. Like I said, we're now live on channel 10, and we're continuing to stream on the city's streaming channels. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. Before I hand things over to Carl Schwartz, our chair, I'm going to go over a few guidelines and housekeeping tips to make sure that tonight's meeting runs smoothly for everybody involved. So first, for all the folks who might be watching at home, I'm going to introduce the meeting participants who are online right now. First, we have Carl Schwartz, the chair of the BAR. We're also joined by Brett Gastinger, vice chair. Other BAR members who are present include Tim Moore, Jody Lehendro, Sherry Lewis, Ron Bailey, and Andy McClure. James Zemer should be joining us, I believe, later on tonight. We're also joined by Jeff Werner, who is my colleague and city staff. And throughout the meeting, applicants and other participants will join the meeting as necessary. For members of the public who are on the call right now, who'd like to provide any comment, there are several places in the agenda where you can speak. At the beginning of the meeting, we allow time for comments from the public for items not on the agenda. Then, before the BAR deliberates each individual application, we allow time for public comment. In order to provide any public comment, we ask that you register for the meeting if you haven't already, and you can do this on the city calendar on the city website. When you join the meeting through Zoom, you'll become an attendee. And then when we get to the comment portion of the agenda, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature on the participant list, and then I will unmute you. Then the timer will begin and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Also, meeting attendees may end up using, oh no, sorry, this is my script and it's a little outdated. For applicants who are online already, you are currently in the meeting as an attendee, which means you have limited audio and video capabilities. When your project comes up on the agenda for review, I'll promote you to panelist, so you'll have mute and unmute capabilities and we can see you. When I promote you from attendee to panelist, you'll be booted out of the meeting temporarily, and then you'll come back in as panelist, so just hang tight. Also, applicants during the staff and applicant presentations for each project, I'll be sharing my screen to scan through pages of your application that you submitted for visual aid. While the BAR deliberates, I'm happy to share my screen again to reference specific pages or drawings. To applicants and BAR members, if you'd like me to go to a specific page, please give me a verbal command to direct me to the specific page number. I guess now it's time for me to hand things over to our chair, Carl, but feel free to ask me any additional technical questions throughout the meeting if you have any. Thanks.
All right, well, welcome to this regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review. Staff will introduce each item, followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. The chair I will then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. After questions are closed, I will ask for comments from the public. For each application, members of the public are each allowed 3 minutes to ask questions and 3 minutes to offer comments. Speakers shall identify themselves and provide their address. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is, regarding only the exterior aspects of the project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. Thank you for participating. So right now we have matters from the public not on the agenda. And this would also include anything on the consent agenda, which tonight includes 511 East Water Street.
If you'd like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand feature in the participant tab or press *9 if you're calling in. It's a small attendee list and I don't see any raised hands.
Great. All right, so we've got the consent agenda, which again includes the BAR minutes from October 20th, 2020, and the COA for 511 East Water Street. Do we have any comments or any motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Thank you very much. I will now call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Aye.
Mr. McClure.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gastinger.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Moore. Thank you. Mr. Lahendra.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
Thank you. And Ms. Lewis.
Aye.
All right. Well, we've got our first item on the agenda is 116 West Jefferson Street.
I'm going ahead and I'm promoting Gordon Johnson, who represents this project. So he should be joining us now.
All right. All right. And while that's happening, so this is a project that we had on the agenda last month, and Ms. Johnson was not available to join us, but we did have a brief discussion about it, and I've modified the staff report accordingly. And so this is a COA request. It's for 116 West Jefferson Street. This is in the North Downtown ADC district. This is formerly the Rivercombe House. It's a colonial revival style home that was constructed in 1913. There is a building at the rear. I don't know whether to call it a house or a structure or what, but it's contemporary. I think probably sometime late 80s or late 70s, early 80s. Their house originally had a front porch. In the photos you see it, and was removed in 1974. The request is first to reconstruct the front porch as best as possible, given the evidence and information we have available, which is summarized in the report. At the rear of the house, there is a connection, a hyphen that links the original house with the building in the back, looking to remove that. And then there's some alterations to the structure in the rear, taking out some windows, adding some doors. And then finally, there's on the rear of the existing house, where that hyphen is removed, the porch will be, the railing will be repaired to match what is there. I said we've had a lot of conversations about this. Staff's been supportive of it. Again, reminder that what the staff report and the photographs and the application kind of all together form the body of this submittal. So make sure that as we, when a motion is made, that if anything needs to be revised or amended, that's correctly expressed. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Gordon, and unless the BAR has any questions for me.
Hey, evening. First meeting, so might ask for some guidance on what you're looking for me to present exactly, but I think our intention here is to rebuild the porch as it was originally built and restore the rear decks in the same fashion as they were originally constructed.
Gordon, if I'm happy to change the PDF that's shown, or the page to whichever page you need me to. So just direct me if there's an image that you want to have on the screen.
Okay. Frankly, I probably need a little direction of what you're looking for from me, being my first bar meeting.
You can add whatever you want. If there's anything in the staff report that you want to emphasize, or if if the staff report says everything that you think is necessary, you don't have to add anything.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Well, with that being said, yeah, I think the staff report did communicate everything we were looking for. Like I said, we're looking to restore the original structure on the front and the rear.
Well, if that's it, then are there any questions from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay. Questions from the
Any raised hands?
So I guess just to be clear, the staff had a big long list of, I guess, descriptions of all the things you would match and do, and you're in agreement with those?
Yes, they all looked like they were in alignment with what we were trying to accomplish.
Okay, including the, I think your drawings had a built-up roof. Is metal okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
I think, oops, sorry, Mr. Chair, if you could scroll up to my, I guess where they were in the staff report. I don't know whether I'm scrolling yours, Robert, or mine. Sorry. And just go through there and just off Gordon, it's fine. This is, there is no, I don't want to say no formality to BAR, but this is the design process, and it's that's the give and take is what this group enjoys and what's good at. So a discussion is fine. Don't worry, you're not. there's no point scale in presentation. So yeah. So and just what happened also, Gordon, is when we were talking about last time, I think Mr. Gastinger was looking on Google and said, hey, there's a house around the corner that has similar columns, maybe we look to that. And so, so the first, I think, point of discussion that we might want to have, so there's in the old photographs, there's a slightly vague, you can tell there's some design, some sort of ornamentation at the top of the column. And so the first item I would say is, and Jody, maybe you can lead the charge on that. It's just to make sure we're clear on the type of column that we're talking about and what Gordon sees. Sorry to jump in, but I was just going to walk down through the staff report item by item.
Did you want me to jump in now, Jeff?
Yes, and I apologize. I didn't add the drawings, but I'm going to send it to Robert so he can put them up there.
Is now an appropriate time, or should we wait till discussion?
Oh, well, I was just going to go walk down through the staff report as far as things that, I'm sorry, I'm being.
Why don't you go ahead then, Jeff? Finish what your presentation is, or your staff report.
Yeah, well, I was basically saying, as far as the discussion goes, if this helped with you all, is to work down through. I know in some of these staff reports, in some of these items, there are some things where paint color to be determined, flooring material to be determined. That this offers a checklist for you all in your conversation with Gordon. That's all I meant, and I just started at the columns at the top. So when we say, is Gordon okay with these things? There are still a few things in here that have some question marks on.
And to be clear, Jeff, there, I mean, I see you've got everything illustrated. Are these illustrations all tied to a one of your discussion points up in the text, or do we kind of need to look at both?
Yes and no. So let me try it this way. I know that stay right there on that image, Robert. So the Scamazzi Ionic, and the Scamazzi is simply the I don't know what the curls are rotated at an angle. And in the old photograph, there is some ornamentation, and you can see it in this image. This is simply an image I pulled offline. But so the question for the BAR is, what is to the extent of being similar to what we can determine from the photographs, what detail does the BAR prefer for the column capital? So that's a question mark for you all.
Talk about now or later?
I'm just recommending that we walk down through this staff report, and anywhere that I have a note or a recommendation that we get a clear, like getting down to in a moment here, the question about the roof.
Then all right, then we'll speed this along, because I don't think we have any more questions. It doesn't sound like, so maybe we should just move right.
Yeah, that's what I understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for sake of formality, are there any comments from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, so yes, let's do as Jeff has said. Let's go through this item by item and make sure we've got everything cleared up. So yeah, you've got, the cornice are going to match. I think you
So
found. Go ahead.
Capitals, I would recommend that the capitals be a Scamozzi ionic, similar to what is at the Altamont Circle example that we're looking at, or that I'm looking at. And Mr. Johnson, you'll be limited to what is available out there on the market. So Jeff, I expect, can help you with some of the possibilities for manufacturers that offer Scamozzi capitals, but it'll be your responsibility to match the Scamozzi capital so that it's similar in appearance to this, and also of the proper size for the column and the pilaster itself.
Okay. Into that.
And I would recommend that you just, once you find what you want to use, just give staff send them a copy of it, and we can leave that up to administrative approval.
Okay.
If the rest of the board agrees.
Does anyone have any concerns with that?
And Robert, I just emailed you something if you are able to.
Give me a sec.
All right, and this is just to express what, not trying to reinvent the wheel, just to express what we were talking about. The columns that are on Altamont Circle have, there we go. Okay, so for example, there is the onyx that has the acanthus, and then go to the next one, Robert. This one simply has that band at the top. That seems to be sort of what's there. So I think the idea was, that at least this is how, in conversation with Jody, is that there be some sort of ornament at the top, either of that band or even with the acanthus leaves, but it just not be plain below the capital. And so that's the question for the BAR.
So Jeff or Robert, whoever's controlling the cursor, could you put the cursor on the necking that's on the heartwood carving example, so that Mr. Johnson knows what we're talking about? The necking is that piece there. And then on the historic photo, oh, you don't have that. I've got it on my screen, sorry. But clearly there appears to be something similar on the historic photo, unlike the Altamont Circle shaft.
Yeah, there it is there.
Got it, I understand.
Yeah, and so it's probably more prominent even in the engaged pilaster at the rear, you can see that line. So that was where we were saying, and kind of putting it on to the rest of the BAR. Is that a detail that you all feel is important? I'll stop talking.
The comments so far all suggest that we're treating this as a reconstruction. So in that vein, the recommendations from the Secretary of the Interior is that we match that detail as closely as we can.
So Gordon, are you clear on what we're talking about there?
Yes.
On capital. Great.
Understand the details at the top of the column and having them all match and running them by you guys and maybe getting some feedback from you guys of manufacturers if that's something you have on hand.
Yeah.
And hopefully this would just be through Jeff, because if you match if you provide him something that, meets the criteria we're describing, it should hopefully just stop with Jeff. You don't have to come back to us.
Yeah.
So I think the next. Yeah.
Yeah. The goal is not.
You're enjoying yourself so much.
The goal is not a $15,000 custom column capital. But it is. I know there's a lot of different variety and types out there, and so it'd be you and I working together, Gordon, to find something that's available and that begins to simulate this that ring at the top. All right.
Can I just add? There's also no issue with Gordon reaching out to individual bar members for opinions, also.
None whatsoever.
So I think
just in case Jody has an opinion you'd like to hear.
I think the next issue on this one was the gutter detail. Am I right, Jeff?
Well, the next one down? So the trim and cornice. Just to be clear, we've got existing trim and cornice on the house, so that can be replicated. The next was on the list is just the railing, the rail, the bottom rail, and the pickets.
Where you PDF is completely not the same order as mine, but okay.
Well, I'm on page 2. Staff report under discussion.
Oh, well, you were telling us to go through all the pictures instead of that. Okay, got it.
Oh no, that's my Baltimore accent. I said pictures, and I was talking space. No.
Okay, good. That's
right.
Good.
So on railing. So here is just to be clear that the profile of the railing and of the pickets, we're offering some latitude, probably even more so than on the column capitals. And I also, specifically noted there that the height, will conform to building code. So, but if there was anything more specific that we wanted to say about the railing, other than similar to what you said about the column capitals, bounce it off me.
I think your description, I think you got it.
Okay, good. Now to the roof. And this was the discussion of, and staff's recommendation was to evaluate a standing seam metal, because that is what's there. But there's also, acknowledging that some distance below the sill of the windows is necessary. And with that, also the gutter and downspout component of it. So that's where, now if Gordon had a really good reason for going with EPDM, now's the opportunity to present that, or vice versa.
No, I think we actually meant for it to say standing seam. I don't think the intent was EPDM. I think the intent was to replicate what was there. So if that's standing seam, that's what we would do.
Okay, and then on the gutter detail, there was discussion when we looked at the 201 East High Street, and that if you would go down to the images, and it is page 13 of the staff report, page 36 of the, and I'm this is where there was the discussion of they were not going to go with the built-in gutter. They had originally thought, proposed just a flat fascia, and there was a request to allow go without the built-in gutter, but to add a piece of crown that replicated that cornice that had been there. So that's a detail that if you all are comfortable with, we were recommending for this project.
And is this the same? Does this crown replicate what's on the main roof?
What you see there is it's the sketch from 201.
What's the photograph on the bottom left of?
Oh, no, I'm like Carl, I'm lost. All that there, everything on that page is from 201 East High Street.
So that, okay.
So
that's the crown that we want to, that is being proposed for the.
Nope. Just only thing that we're referring to here is don't look at the details, just look at the condition of that. The cornice of the front porch will be replicated, including that piece of crown. And if you go up, there's a rough sketch. Rough sketch photographs. If you go up to page 9, I roughly sketched the cornice and then I dropped it into so you can see there it is right there. So stop right there. So that's the cornice approximately that I sketched from the photographs. So there's a piece of a bed mold, there's the dental, then you come up, there's a fascia piece with a kind of a bed mold and wraps the medallions, and then it comes up to the front and there's another piece of fascia with the crown mold going up underneath the eave. So in the condition that here replicating what you did at 201, it would look like that, and then the eave mounted gutter would be suspended in front of that crown.
So in fewer words, the goal is to rebuild the cornice as if the internal gutter were still there, but instead of doing the internal gutter, to tack a half round on at the end.
Yep.
And that crown is matching the crown that's on the main roof, right?
Well, yes, in my best estimate of.
Well, Gordon, as long as we say it's matching the crown of the main, the whole cornice is matching the main roof, from the fascia against the building and the dentals all the way up to the crown beneath the standing seam, including the medallion blocks. All that's the same, and we're adding a half round gutter to it.
Right.
In lieu of a built-in, right?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Good. I'm happy. Sorry.
I have just one quick question, and I may have just sort of missed this, but with the upper roof, is that getting gutters on it now too?
That is currently has built-in gutters that are remaining, that we're not doing any work to.
Got it. So, I mean, I guess the rest of just for the record, and this is really more an opinion on my part, just if it were my house, and I did this similarly, because of the rest of the house being like that, and this is sort of the premier element as you approach the house, my gut would be to remain with built-in gutters, but I'm not enforcing that. I'm just saying that would be I think given the quality of the house, that would be preferred to putting the half rounds, just because they've compromised the line of the eave there. But nobody's going to enforce that. I'm just saying that as an opinion.
And while I support that philosophically, practically, not a doggone built-in gutter that doesn't leak pretty soon. And I just can't. I mean, hell, we can't keep them here at the university, we can't keep them from leaking. And we got, you know, lots of resources. So I can't,
No, that's what I said.
practical reasons for someone to do a built-in gutter.
Yeah, no, I said it's not enforceable. I'm just saying that would be my preference.
I was going to say there, you know, there will come projects where, you know, the age of the house and the type of the house, I think, you know, we're going to have to, you know, Tim's going to, that his opinion will I think have to be weighed. But yeah, this has been somewhat of the BAR's tradition of allowing these the changes. So, but we at least have a detail that maintains that profile. The next question was, and I don't want to get into too much of the weeds, but my assumption was that the porch flooring was either a 1x4, 1x6 run, you know, front to back, and not, you know, some Trex material or not, you know, concrete with tiles. So didn't know how much you wanted to get into that.
What's being proposed?
Yeah.
What is being proposed?
That's up to Gordon.
Again, we're trying to replicate what was there. So I think our intention was some wood decking to match that era. So it would be, you know, match what was in the photo as best as we can. If that was 1x4, that would be what we go with. If it was 1x2, it would be to match that.
Mm. But it'll be wood tongue and groove. So I think that's, yeah, that's what I want to hear, and not, you know.
And that's what I
pressure.
see on Altamont, and I would use Altamont as our model.
And I actually have the note at the bottom says, in the event of unknown detail, applicants shall look to the existing condition on 406 Altamont. So those people are probably going to call me and wonder why people are standing in their front yard. Again, the trim, the apron, all that I think is clear. The ceiling, I'm calling for a ceiling board and a simple cove. That I don't think anything too fancy. Porch framing, clear enough. Lighting, there are no light fixtures proposed, but Gordon, I was going to open the door here for if you had something in mind, or it's not necessarily you have to address it now, but if you had something in mind that we could talk about it.
I don't think we've gotten that far along in the design,
okay.
But I think it would be something simple, straightforward. Again, matching what the original house had. So maybe something over the front door.
The thing over the front door, I think, is a bird's nest now. And then as far as the rest goes, I really, as the staff report, I don't have a lot of concern for the rear building, and I think that comes through in the staff report. And so I just pass that back to the BAR unless you had anything.
I think we just, so the windows, I recognize you said they're probably builder grade. I just want to know what's going back in. You know, we do have rules about vinyl, so just want to make sure that what type of windows are you proposing to put back in? Are they wood windows? Are they aluminum? Are they something else?
We honestly haven't gotten that far in the design either. I think they wouldn't be vinyl,
Okay.
but where they will land, I'm not sure yet. I think I'm not even sure if we're replacing all the windows or it was just windows where adjustments are made to the attachment. And if that's the case, it would just be to match the remaining windows as best as possible.
You're talking about the windows in the contemporary building behind that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know what you guys think, but I think it'd be good to suggest that, yes, you can match what's existing in style, but if the existing windows are vinyl, the new one should be wood, should be aluminum clad wood, or should be fiberglass composite. Is that fair?
Yeah. If you just would include that in the motion, I think that's fine.
Okay. And yeah, just to submit those cut sheets to Jeff. So I think the three things that would need to be submitted to Jeff are a light fixture, window cut sheets, and the column capital that you end up choosing. Was there anything else that?
In the railing profile.
Railing profile, okay. That's 4 things. All right, is there any further discussion or?
I had a question for Gordon. Was there any thought on restoring the shutters to this property?
Yes, there was actually. And I think the client architect also maintained the same thing. They'd like to restore what the original building had. And if you guys have any input on what that should be, that would definitely be helpful.
Would.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jerry. I think that the shutters bring a lot to that elevation, and it's both elevations on that face the street. It'd be really great to bring those back.
Yeah, that's great. We'll definitely incorporate that.
And maybe just a list of materials on the porch. I'm sort of it seems like Jeff has submitted to you a list of materials, but I sort of feel like we should be getting them from you as the applicant. I feel like I'm just kind of catching up on this, but.
Fair enough, do that.
For instance, the flooring on the porch. Besides lighting and other features, so thank you.
So that would go to Jeff just to confirm that they're meeting what we've discussed, correct? Do you want to see that, Sherry, or are you okay with Jeff reviewing that list?
I guess that's my question. Are we voting on this as a final submittal? Because I'm not seeing that the applicant's given us a lot of materials except for some features that are shown kind of around the exterior of the porch, or it's called out in wood, but I don't know.
The way I'm looking at it is I see, I mean, the photographs only offer so much. The description, we're providing a template with what the other ones we have. I think with the flooring, I was more getting at that it's wood, that's tongue glue groove wood flooring, and in the 1x4, 1x6, so that it's not, just big pieces of something. So either one of those or even something smaller would be fine. As far as the railings on the, being a bit familiar with the work Gordon and his folks have done, I suspect it's going to be, that they understand this, what we're shooting for. But yeah, if they came in and said, hey, here's what we've got, and I'm like, guys, that's just way off base, then I don't sign off on the building permit. So that's the next step in all of this is that, when the building permit comes in, I'll at least want to see what are they planning to do, and that's the final sign off. But it is where, it's, I think what we're saying is the BAR is not requiring a custom manufactured turning here. They're not. We're trying to find something of a similar profile of that period, and then trusting my judgment to say that, not to approve it, but to say no. I can say you've missed the mark. And I think that's appropriate for this sort of thing. You're not. I think if it were a brick building and you were saying, well, does that look like the same brick? And this look like no, that's different. So that's all. I'm quite comfortable with this. And
does anybody have any concerns with approving it per the discussion items? And I think we just have to clarify a few things, like the roof will be metal and the column capital will be as Jody has specified. So just
the porch railings. I'm showing a photograph here. I've given you specific references to existing components. So there really should be no.
I think the motion, I would hope, could just reference these discussion points with the clarifications that we need to make. Is that fair? Okay. Sherry, are you okay with that, or okay? Would anybody like to make that motion?
Or Chevy Vega be parked out in front of it?
Would anybody like to make a motion?
If I could,
a little rough.
So I offer in the staff recommendation, just above the motion, 3 things. One, recommend approval on removing the connection, no issues there. Relative to the porch reconstruction, you can see what I wrote, and you can alter that accordingly. And then for the alterations to contemporary structure, instead of saying staff does not believe additional specificity is necessary, say that that the windows will be, Carl had the list.
Yeah.
So on front porch reconstruction, staff, you're saying approval, reference, this, use the second sentence, and also the note about the column capitals and the railing profile coming to me, the note about the lighting fixture cut sheet coming to me.
Is somebody making a motion?
Tim, aren't you doing that?
Sure, why not? I won't mention the Vega. Okay, ready? Okay, having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I moved to find that the proposed front porch reconstruction and exterior alterations at 116 West Jefferson Street satisfy the BAR's criteria. We would like to see additional information regarding, what you select finally for the column capital, the porch railings, and the window specification for the new addition. And also, I think, is there anything else in terms of the materials? I don't think so.
Did you say light fixture?
Oh, and the light fixture, yes, sorry, thank you.
All right, can I suggest an amendment?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna read something and then you tell me if I'm off. I would recommend the following. Having considered the standards set forth in the city code, including the ADC district guidelines, I move to find the proposed front porch reconstruction exterior alterations at 116 West Jefferson Street satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this property and other properties in the North Downtown ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted with the following modifications. 1, the front porch will have standing seam roof and a gutter detail similar to that in the staff report. That the approval references the narratives and clarifications and photographs included as supplemental to the staff report and the applicant's submittal. The applicant will submit for staff review the proposed column capital. The applicant will provide for staff review the porch railing and pickets and any proposed exterior light fixtures. Second, the alterations to the windows and doors at the rear contemporary structure. The applicant will provide cut sheets for staff, and the understanding that those windows shall not be, any new windows shall not be vinyl, but may be wood, help me out, Carl.
Wood, aluminum clad wood, or fiberglass composite.
Do you accept my friendly amendment?
Of course.
Thank you, Jeff. Any seconds?
Second.
Thank you, Ron. I will call a vote now. Mr. McClure.
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger.
Aye.
Mr. Moore. Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Miss Lewis,
Aye.
and Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, Gordon, thank you. And we're actually even more fun in real person in a meeting. So hopefully nothing else was entertaining. If you would mind pulling down the sign or wherever Robert put it in front of the building. And as you move forward, whatever you need, Robert and I, in fact, live around the corner so we'll help you out as much as you all need, okay?
Great, I appreciate all the help, and yeah, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon.
Right, thank you.
I know we've been picky, but this is an exciting project. So, I mean, thank you for bringing this to us.
Yeah, we're excited as well.
Great project.
All right, next.
So as we move
Yes.
on to the next agenda item, I am promoting landscape architect Ann Prey and Whitney Hudson and Jeff Dreyfus from Bushman Dreyfus, and they will all represent 612 West Main.
Oh boy.
Let me get there. Okay. So, and I know we have some additional things on the agenda afterwards, and excuse me, and I know that tonight, just before we get into anything about this, this is intended as a continuation of the discussion towards a final submittal, towards a COA, but we're not there tonight. However, so we're all clear, the applicant must request, well, the applicant is obligated on his end to request the deferral this evening. The BAR can only accept that. Lacking a request from the applicant, the BAR would have to take a vote up or down on this proposal at this time. So just so we're clear on that. So this is a COA request for 612 West Main. And so folks know the address is 602 to 616, but we're referring to collectively as 612 West Main. It is in the downtown ADC district. I also know some people always wonder about that, but actually the West Main district doesn't start until further down the block to the west. This is a request to construct a new mixed-use building. As I've mentioned before, there's an existing concrete automotive building there built in the 50s. It is non-contributing and it's not subject to BAR review. Oh, look, I have West Main, so I need to fix the staff report there. You all have had a couple of discussions with the applicant. The last was on December 15th. And what we've been doing is working our way through a series of the design steps, and the applicant has provided graphic information for us, for the staff, for you all to review, and has presented tonight some questions that they would like to specifically get at in the conversation. And it doesn't mean you all are only limited to what they're presenting and asking about, but that's the game plan for this evening. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jeff and good evening, Jeffrey.
Yep. Jeff, I have the PDF that you sent me.
That would be great.
Downloaded. So I'll share to the page I need to go to.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody, for having us back. We're not intending to wear you out. We're just intending to keep you informed and give you an opportunity to continue to give us guidance prior to coming to you for official approval. I think what I'd like to do early in this is hand it over to Ann Prey, who is our landscape architect on the project. But to give you all a very quick overview, that the questions that we sent are comments, any thoughts you all have, questions you have about the landscape and the hardscape plan. The building design, the north elevation, the West Main Street elevation, really hasn't changed much from what you all saw 2 months ago. I'll talk a little bit about some of the modifications that we're contemplating there. but then you'll also see both the west elevation and south elevations, so that we might get any input from you all on those as we continue to develop them. So given that, I turn it over to Anne, who might do a little bit of describing our intentions with the landscape and hardscape and how that's been fleshed out.
All right, thanks guys for giving us some time this evening to talk a little bit about the development of the plan since you last saw it. I want to speak a little bit about how we are trying to respond to some earlier comments about creating pedestrian engagement and making the building more active at the street, at the same time looking to break down the building mass and making it a little bit more pedestrian and body scale friendly as well to the street. I'm going to run through sort of the plan design here pretty quickly, but probably work from the north elevation a little bit more so that we can, look at that in scale and in elevation. I think it reads a little bit better. From the outset of the project, this courtyard area, which is on the right-hand side of the screen, has always been an important part of that residential entry of the building, which obviously is one of its largest purposes. We're looking to create an engagement with the mural wall and also look at a way to sort of, just slide in a little bit smaller sort of garden experience here with using a water feature and some benches and some planting at the same time, opening up the courtyard for the entry. You can see one of the devices we're using to sort of connect with the larger building is a change in material on the ground plane. From something smaller at the street to then something larger that runs along the whole front of the building to then again something smaller in the courtyard, which we think gives it a little bit sense of place as you come in. We have right now located 3 planters along the length of the building, 2 at the sort of forebay to create a little bit more of a density. So we have this more open concept at the courtyard, closing it off a little bit in the front of the forebay side of the building, and then again, opening it up more towards the center and middle as we get to the sort of 5-bay, and then using a larger but singular planter towards the end to relate the scale back to the earlier sort of forebay of the building. You can see here as you run down to the west of the building, we are negotiating with grade a little bit. We have one singular stair that grows into 2 steps at the end. So we have about a foot of grade change running from east to west. Obviously that side on the courtyard, we're looking to make open and as accessible as possible. So that grade does connect flush across to the main sidewalk so that, it's obviously more accessible for everyone. One of the things I want to point out here that I think is pretty important that we get into actually in the next slide as well, we are required to show 4 trees, to plant 4 trees rather. And I want to talk about the placement of these trees as part of this project that's actually happening. And, we know that the West Main Streetscape plan shows 4 trees, obviously not in this location, but also I think in somewhat problematically in a really different location with the curb line shifting in the future. 2 quick things I'll just point out here and then we can look at that slide, I think, Robert, which is the next one, is that we are actually also calling out the bike racks at this point on either ends of the building. You can see on that west side, I'm using a low retaining wall to hold that space to create that niche for the 2 bike racks. And on the eastern side, closer to the mini mart, we have 3 bike racks there. The last little part here is that we are exploring the form and the sort of permutations of the planters and how they work. The curvilinear idea is a little bit of a nod to what's happening on the inside of the building and the lobby, as we look to sort of soften some of the edges and the hardness. And so we're trying to kind of bring that outside in a playful way and in a more sculptural way. Robert, if you want to go to the next one. Next slide. Yeah, so this is an overlay plan, sorry, just the one before that. This is the overlay plan that shows, and it's on my screen, I apologize, it's very light here, so I hope you can see this, but there are 4 dashed pink circles outboard of the existing curb line. Those are the proposed West Main Streetscape trees. And in quantity obviously works with what we've got, and I think would just be a matter of coordination. However, the curb line is nearly 2 feet outboard of where the existing curb line is right now on West Main, which obviously, lends us to believe that they're sort of redesigning the whole street, of course, with parking and different curb lines and curb cuts. And so the extent to which we're actually going to be able to negotiate with that positioning at this point is kind of unknown. So I'd like to, just figure out exactly what the expectations are from the bar as how we're supposed to sort of negotiate and handle that at this point. Yeah, so next one, Robert, now, thank you. So here you can see an elevation. Obviously, I think we all know this, the streetscape trees, the trees that we're proposing, the 4 trees, those are really going to be what competes with the overall scale of the building. And I think here in their placement, working a little bit more symmetrically side to side with each one centered on a major sort of more column of the building, whereas the planters themselves bring the scale down to the pedestrian and the body, and they work a little bit more to create a little bit of density against the building and with your own perception of it as you're walking by. So as you look at it, you can see sort of the courtyard space again to the left, where I show, the water basin and these 2 stone benches. That's a much more open experience overall. And then as you walk by the first sort of bay again, or the first sort of true building, the 4 bay, that's more broken up with the planters and the trees. Again, a more open sort of a center and last sort of third, and then a planter on the end, nodding back to sort of the balance of the 4 bay building preceding it, with then finally the open stair on the end and the retaining wall. I think it's important a little bit to talk about the water. One of the things about this building that I think overall, and this gets a little bit, again, more towards the interior, but it does go from this very rectilinear, clean facade outside. And as you move your way into the building, it becomes a really calm, sort of curvilinear, sort of meditative experience. And I think what we're trying to do by the introduction of water is introduce just a small sound, just a small nod to, you've come home and it's a little bit more chill and a little bit more calm than what you just left on the street. And we're trying to sort of set up that choreography from the moment you enter into the courtyard. So the articulation of that right now really has a long way to go to get the design done. But the idea is that we would be introducing, just a small amount of sound of water. The planters themselves sort of, similarly, I think if you look in the next slide, you can see some different precedents, and as well the illustrative elevations above. We are playing with the form of the planter and if it might have a little bit more of a batter to the front face, how the bench itself could, connect in or participate with the planter so that they overall are a little bit more sculptural, but also feel like they can be occupied. The plantings themselves, if you know me at all, and some of you I do know, and some of you I'll get to know, but I am really into creating planting design as an important part of the piece. I think in this case, looking at the building and obviously the more northern facade, we actually have a lot of opportunity to use plants as texture and form. And really, I think, create some interesting palettes that you probably wouldn't see otherwise along the street. So we'd be really looking to create some identity with making the planters really as big, 14, 15 feet long in some cases as we can, and really get some good planting in there. I've got another image there of the paving precedent and just different ideas in scale. I think the paving is going to be very calm, much like the building, but we'd really look to just maybe 2 different scales of paving to start to create a break between path and place. And then the water basin on the end, again, just a very small nod to just a little something different on the street, and introducing again that idea of calm as you come into the building as a resident. So I think the next couple slides actually show this in the architectural sort of rendering, if we want to take a look at that. Here, obviously, actually, it's nice to see the scale of the existing tree, so we get a sense of kind of how big these trees might hopefully become over time. You can see the courtyard and the planters kind of laid out there. And then I think, Robert, the next one is just, the
next.
Yeah, let's just go to the next one. you guys can comment on that one, ask me any questions. This is just obviously from the other end. I think what's nice to see here is actually just the stair, the sort of it's just a 1 foot grade change at that point, but obviously it's something we need to deal with and and wanted to really keep it as open as possible. So really using a stair as a occupiable moment, but to come up to the retail promenade and then leaving that little bit of a space on the end for the bike racks. One thing I would say, just backing up about the bike racks, because this might come up too, is that I think it's really just been our experience looking at how they function at 600 right in the front of the building and right in front of the coffee and retail space. And I think the takeaway there really is it's been kind of problematic to really put them in a place of egress. And so we are, as tricky as it kind of has been, we are looking to, give them their own space, of course, and make them noticeable, but not necessarily put them in the courtyard where we're trying to create a more intimate experience. I don't know, Jeff, if you have other things you'd like to add, or I kind of blast through things so we can get to discussions, because I feel like that can be more helpful for everyone overall, but that's, those are the pieces I would just share at this point with where we are.
The only thing I would add relative to what we're showing here is that we do intend to have greenery, options for greenery along the railings, the balcony railings. Whether or not that is owner provided or tenant provided, we've got a long way to work through on that, but we do intend to add that bit of color and texture to the facade. I'm happy to talk a little bit, if you all would like. I'll talk about the facade development and then just open it up entirely to you all, or if you'd prefer to address the landscape hardscape first, fine with that. But why
don't you finish up with your presentation?
Okay, all right. So if you wouldn't mind, Robert, going back just a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, not a great deal has changed. Maybe one more, let's see. Waiting. Another slide back, perhaps. Here we go, thank you. So we're really looking for ways to quiet the building down. As Anne noted, the interior lobby of the residential entry is going to be very curvilinear. And that is something that we are thinking may actually make its way out to the exterior of the building in a very quiet way next to the front door, but not ready to talk about that. But in trying to quiet the building down, you'll see that we've begun thinking more about color and texture since our last conversation. So the next slide, if you would, Robert, does show how we're beginning to think about the particular elements of the facade. Thinking that we are intending that the north, west, and east elevations will be brick. We'll talk in a minute about the texture of the brick and the hyphens, as we discussed before. But thinking that the upper levels might be white or off-white, we're thinking that the color of the building might be more of a heather brick or a lighter cream color. It's not going to be white. It's not going to be stark white. We know that much. We've got a ways to go. We're exploring both brick that can be completely painted or brick that has enough color variety to it, soft color that we like it. So we'll be back with more on that. But I think what's important to note here is that we do believe that going with a different color on the retail level, at ground level, helps with the building to delineate what's residential and what's commercial in terms of its scale, but it also makes the engagement with the street different from the facade as it goes higher up in the residential area. So we're liking this. We don't quite yet know how we want to provide cover at the doors into the retail. That'll be something that we continue to develop. But you'll also see that perhaps that same darker color, which might be a metal, we're working toward that, but that material would probably also introduce itself there on the left at the door into the residential lobby. And you can begin to see the curve of that might express itself right in that small area. So we're thinking upper windows and doors would be light in color, as close a match as we can get it to the brick material on the facade, and darker down below. So we'd like to hear if this is an acceptable direction. The railings that we see on the balconies will also probably be light in color. We're trying to get away from an initial, some of our earlier designs showed a pretty stark contrast between black or dark bronze windows and doors and railings up above, which were similar to what's down below. And it was becoming a little bit too checkerboardy for our taste. So as I say, trying to quiet it down. That's the direction that we're thinking we're going to go with colors. If we can keep going, Robert. One thing I would like to note about the hyphens of the facade, and we've got an elevation further on in here. We are still imagining that the hyphens will be a different texture from the main blocks of the facade that move forward, both the 4-bay and the 5-bay. We don't in any way think that the hyphens will be a different color, but perhaps a different texture brick, whether we model the surface or we do something with the control joints. We do want to make it different, subtly different. They step back, obviously, and they step down a little bit, but we're, again, trying to keep things related, but quietly different from one to the other. I think here you can also begin to see that the lower level, the darker color on the retail level, does do what a number of buildings on West Main Street does, and that is call a distinction between the retail level and the residential levels up above, including on the Holtzinger building right there on the right. There's a distinct line drawn there between the ground level engagement and the upper level residential. If you wouldn't mind, Robert, the next slide. Here we're beginning to talk about what the rear elevation will be. This might be a little bit hard to make out, but on the lowest level, we have 2-story studio lofts behind those tall double doors. And so those are probably Juliet balconies that can be opened, and they speak to the height of that floor elevation. As you all know, on West Main Street, we're supposed to have, I believe it's close to a 17-foot tall first floor. And so we're actually taking advantage of that to provide loft units on the back side of the building with living down below and a sleeping loft up above. The next level up has large terraces off of the units. And also it includes the green roof that we're going to be incorporating in the project. Green roof is down at this level and not on the rooftop. The rooftop may or may not be occupied in the future. We're not there yet, but we think this is a great opportunity for us to bring the greenery, the softness of that to the living units on the south side of the building. So the bronze panels that you see projecting perpendicular to the building are simply dividers between the units. So for instance, on the second level, the far left, there are 3 bays of windows and doors that open onto that terrace before you get to the divider. That's one complete unit. And then after that, there's a 2-bay unit. So that's what those are. We need to provide privacy panels between units. And then on the upper floors, you can see there are balconies off each of the living rooms of the various units. The thing that I would like to point out here is that we would like to be able to stucco the upper part of the rear facade in this instance. The building to the right, 600 West Main Street, is metal panels, as most of you know, metal panels on the north, west, and east facade. And on the south facade, we turn the corners on the south facade with the metal panels, but then the entire rear of the building is stucco. And we want to do the same thing here on the upper 3 floors of this building. Quite frankly, it's a cost savings that we hope and anticipate will allow us to use brick for the rest of the building. It's not unusual. The rear of buildings in any urban environment is a different material. Again, we would keep it quiet. It wouldn't be distinctly different from the brick. We'd come with whatever colors we're proposing in that regard. And then on the next slide, I think, Robert, might be elevations, full elevations. Here you can see the elevations as they stand currently, the hyphens that we've discussed in the previous discussion there in the middle and on the far right. And then the next drawing, if you would, Robert, closer up. So color coding only to say some different texture on those hyphens and also on the residential block that sits back from the building. Sits back from the street. And then the next drawing should be the west elevation, I believe, the south elevation. As I described, the upper balconies on the top 2 floors, but then terraces on that 3rd floor level just above the studio loft balconies. And then the next elevation, trying to take the motif from the north facade on the west elevation there on the left, take the motif of the openings and sizes and continue that to give a bit of order to that facade, which is on the alley adjacent to the Holsinger building. The windows are actually, the larger windows are all windows in residential, at the end of residential corridors. And the 2 smaller windows there on the far left are within units to allow those to be 3rd bedroom. And then you see on the far right there, the elevation facing the courtyard of 600 West Main Street. And the mass of the building of 600 West Main is dashed in the very dark line there on the left of that drawing. It's a very narrow courtyard, as you probably are aware. At the end of that courtyard would be doors leading into the lobby of 612 West Main Street, so that the tenants of both buildings will have access to the courtyard and to the lobby. And if there is in the future a rooftop amenity on this building, the tenants of the adjacent building could enjoy it. I think that might be the majority of it. I think we've included some of our previous slides that showed ideas of ways that we can achieve different textures, different openings of the windows. Maybe the next slide, Robert. Thank you. The image to the middle right image, the light facade, is not unlike what we're discussing, perhaps lighter color for the brick, but a darker color for the retail openings, and being different from what's happening on the residential up above. I think that might be it. Robert, these were the previous drawings. I don't think we need to go there unless we need to compare and contrast. So as I mentioned in my notes, we'd appreciate any and all comments on the landscape, hardscape, especially as it relates to what Anne is showing, and importantly, noting that the tree locations relative to what is shown on the West Main Street streetscape project. And then also any comments you have about the facade development, any of the elevations, the colors, materials we're contemplating at this point, and as well as stucco on the south side of the building. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Anne. Are there any questions from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
I'm looking at the list, Carl, and I don't see any raised hands.
Any questions from the board? Tim?
For Anne, and this might just be an omission, but the plan looks like there's actually a short, like, sittable retaining wall next to the bikes. Is that right? It's not in the elevation, but is that right?
It is. It's shown in the elevation. It's very small. It's hard to see. It's only a foot tall or 15 inches tall and only 8 inches wide.
All right. I was wondering whether it was something that matched the height of the planters or not, but I guess that's not the case.
Yeah, I don't have it matching the planters. I've just kept it pretty low profile.
Robert, that's probably page 3 or 4.
Page 7 of.
Yeah, it's on the end there on the right-hand side in that elevation that you're looking at. Concrete retaining wall.
Right. So I was looking at the rendering, and so.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
It probably didn't make it to that, Tim.
That's what it looks like. That's what I was wondering. That's what I thought.
Yeah. That is the move-in door for the building for all of the tenants. So yes, there will be a curb there. There will be safety factors so nothing goes rolling off of that end.
I was thinking more it just seemed like the resolution, it looked like in the plans there was something more of a wall there. It was just a resolution question. It makes more sense that there's a wall there. So,
yep.
Which there is, so moot point.
Yeah. No, and one of the reasons too, because that, initially we thought about wrapping the stair back to the corner so that you could really approach the building from that corner, but we need the space for the bike racks. And so we basically ended up with the retaining wall to cut in that space for the racks.
It's did the wrong drawing.
It's a good question because honestly, like we have to utilize every little inch to create all these little moments.
It's also wrapping the stair didn't make a lot of sense because we would be inviting people to step into a private alley. Yeah. And so this was really to direct people out toward the street.
Yeah.
No, I was remarking more its absence than its presence.
Yeah.
Got it.
Just making sure I wasn't missing something.
Cool.
And I wasn't trying to call you out for missing any of your drawings, Jeff.
That's okay.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Jeff if there's any further thinking about the differences in that brick texture, because the precedents that you showed at the end of the presentation still have quite a wide range. Could you add any more to what you're currently thinking?
I can't. The next step is going to be offering specific samples of what we're thinking. And we're talking with our contractor and our suppliers of what those options are. So I really can't, Breck, at the moment. I wish I could. Right. We need enough of a distinct difference that it's noticeable when you look, but we don't want it to be, we don't want it to scream at you. Yeah.
This is a bit of a zoning question, but so if the West Main Street streetscape plan goes forward, are you still required to put in 4 street trees?
Well, you have to ask your zoning department, I think.
Yeah, and for me right now, my zoning department is the civil engineers because they are way more on top of dealing with this stuff all the time. And they're telling me, yes, that we still have to do 4 trees.
All right.
It is a requirement at the moment, so we are having to live by it. And I will say, I think what Ann has done works well with the building. We don't have the option of furthering the streetscape plan because, as she pointed out, we would be putting our trees in the street. So, but also if we go back to that slide, you will see that where Ann has placed the trees in no way precludes the parking pull-off areas, anything in that plan that they're showing. So it would appear to me that we could keep those trees precisely where she's proposing them. The city would have a little bit less cost as part of that project.
Suppose the streetscape plan doesn't go forward, which, listening to council, it sounds like there's, something might get cut. Are the power lines a problem? It seems that this site has accumulated some new power lines since the neighboring project was built.
The power lines are a problem, and we are going to deal with them during construction. I don't know that we're going to be dealing with them permanently. Okay. We will have to deal with them temporarily, as we did with 600 West Main Street.
All right. Okay. Hopefully this is possible. I would like your application to include your temporary power plans. because I think it's important to know if, even if poles are being moved temporarily, you know, trees sometimes have to come down for temporary movement, and it would be nice to know where they go.
We'll do that. What we did last project, and as I understand it right now, this project, they're going to be moved across the street.
Okay.
And we'll happy to include the temporary power plan as part of the application when we're ready.
And just to be clear, when you say temporary, if the streetscape plan doesn't go forward, it's permanent, correct? If you move the power lines.
No, we move the power lines back to where they are at the end of the
so it's just for construction activity that
Correct.
they moved. Okay. Correct. All right.
A permanent solution would be undergrounding them, and that's,
well, of course,
not going to. It's not going to happen as part of this project.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have one. The footprint for the planters. I'm trying to understand the significance of this unusual truncated circle shape. I'm hearing something about it. It has some relevance to what's going on inside the building.
Yes, well, Anne can speak to the shape on the exterior. In the interior of the building, the lobby is actually going to be a very curvilinear series of planes, few if any hard angles, and we're trying to bring that into the hallway, the residential hallways, as a part of the design, a very soft and sinuous, I would call it. Happy to share images of that with you all. We've even got some that as we continue to think about it. But Anne's thought is that we hint on the exterior in terms of the planter shape with what's going on the interior. Anne, am I?
No, that was definitely a starting point. And then I think we liked the idea as well that the planters just became a little bit more sculptural as part of the sort of experience of being on the sidewalk. And I think lastly, especially the two that are in the forebay, the space between them still feels like inside and kind of outside. So I felt like as a way to kind of come into the building and that retail section, it kind of, the planters don't necessarily have a front or a back, or, you know, they're softened in that way. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think we were looking to activate them a little bit.
But for pedestrians who don't live in the building, those shapes would be completely alien to anything they can see on the building.
Yeah, I mean, I think for certain, the idea is that they might just sort of be captured by them and see something different. I think there's a way that they interact with the building too, because obviously it's just sort of brick, much more orthogonal, sort of rectilinear nature. It just sort of seemed like to use the planter as an opportunity to be a little bit more playful on the street too, you know, sort of softens the building in a way.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to understand.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I mean, I think we're still working through it too, and what the final shapes will be. And again, whether or not they have sort of sidewall angle or not, we're kind of still playing with it.
So do they match the material of the window frames on the first floor level? Or is that just, they kind of look like they might? I'm just wondering.
I think for me, it's definitely a detail question at this point that I'm not totally clear on, because I have to admit that Jeff and I have to have those conversations. But I think we would look to create some continuity for sure.
Yeah, it kind of implies it. That's what I was curious.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I will say also that one of the things that we've talked about with the shape of the planters is I think they're softer. They're a little bit more inviting than all the rectilinear planters we all know in our lives. And there is a playfulness to them that might invite something a little bit more relaxed on what is an otherwise pretty regimented facade.
I have a question for Jeff. On the south facade, on the upper floors, stucco and not ethos?
I can't say I don't know for sure, Sherry, which of those it would be. My preference would be stucco, but it might end up being ephes. Yes, that almost came out.
Did you say feces?
It seemed to head that way.
Yeah. But again,
you said it. I didn't.
I know. It's something that we'll come back to you all with.
That pronunciation is exactly my sentiment. I support it on the back, and I would support it on the back, and I'll definitely support it if it were stucco.
I do want to, I say this all the time, and I apologize, but I just want to make the point that building codes require continuous exterior insulation on commercial buildings. So in general, when we see the word stucco, it's EIFS. So we just need to, and I don't know if you can detail it a different way, but I think that's something that needs to be fixed in our guidelines, that it's, there is no stucco anymore unless it's just on concrete. I mean, Jeff, you might have a way of getting around that and doing actual stucco.
You can, but it gets very expensive. And the real difficulty with EIFS is sort of the hollowness. When you tap on it, you can get a variety of finishes. I think we were very successful at 600 West Main on getting finishes on the EIFS that does not look like your standard EIFS. And I think it's as much a matter of the intent of the architect and the ability of the installers to achieve something that's not just slathered on icing that we see everywhere. So that will definitely be a part of what we do. It's important that we get that surface right for the tenants of the building as much as anything else, since they're out there on their balconies. So it's not a throwaway material from our standpoint.
Well, I don't see any more questions. So we can always ask questions during discussion. Are there any comments from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
Again, Carl, it doesn't look like there's anybody for comment.
All right. We can, and people can say whatever, or can go off on whatever subject they like, but I think it would be a good idea to probably follow, at least start with Jeff's questions and then move on from there if you want to elaborate. So the landscape would be the first part. With the comments in regard to the proportion of the planting relative to the building, and then how to deal with this plan versus the West Main streetscape plan.
I'll jump in. I really like the development of the site plan and the landscape, especially compared to where it was previously, where the planters really felt like they were kind of armoring the building, or maybe having a very distinct zonation or between the public sidewalk and the walk in front of the retail spaces. I like the way that I think that low step will get used a lot. It will be a piece of street furniture, and it would be, and is a more graceful way to make that delineation, make it more subtle. I like the shape of the planters for a couple of reasons. One is I think that it really does facilitate a lot more east-west movement along the facade of the building, and at the same time gets a longer amount of planting area in proportion to the building. I will say though that I do think, because maybe perhaps the thinness of the wall and the way that they're rendered in the plan, they do feel a little bit inconsequential or a little bit more like street furniture. And so there's maybe a balance there. I'm not sure if they either could get just a little bit larger, just beef up just a bit more to have a relationship to this building, or there could be another one added, or it seems like they're just feeling a little bit sparse currently. But I like the tactic, and I like the materiality and the way that they be deployed. I think the material of them too, being a little bit more of a street furniture and not feeling like a constructed built-in feature might lend themselves to feeling a little bit more like almost quasi-movable part of the street, and maybe alleviate some of the fear that Jody might express about, you know, whether they really feel like they're a part of the public landscape or not. Related to the trees, this is my personal opinion, is that if we wait for the city to figure out West Main, we'll still be waiting. I applaud the tactic to go ahead and put the trees in at the location that that works best for this building, and at a scale that also works best for the street. I would hope that you'd consider species that will operate at that street tree scale and really create a high canopy. Would make for really excellent public space below. And you know, and when the West Main Street project happens in about 30 years, then you know, they'll work around these trees. So that's my, the only thing I would note about that is you know, as you hopefully can be thinking about larger trees, is to make certain in the early planning that ample soil volumes are provided, so that we really can get the kind of and size and scale of tree that you would appreciate there. Thank you.
Thanks, Brick.
I got a quick question that related to what Breck just asked. Where's the power line? When the power lines come back, are they going to create havoc with those trees?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they can, and they have, and they do. I will say, I'm loath to go on record. I'm not going on record with saying it, but I am saying we are talking with Dominion about the possibility of locating the power lines under the sidewalk. It's in everyone's best interest if we can do it, but we all know that Dominion moves at its own pace and its own schedule as well. So we are trying, and we're hoping we can do it. I hesitate to mention it. We don't want it held against us in the future, but having to put those lines back at 600 West Main just seemed inane. And so if we can do better than that, we're going to try.
It might actually help get the West Main Street project happening. It's one more budget item they can remove.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I guess if we're talking about the landscaping first, I'm going to jump in next. I agree with Breck about the planters. I mean, I could see, I like the one with the seat in it. I could actually see just making that a standard feature for all three of them. The other thing I could see doing is, you know, they work great in plan, but in elevation, other than, you know, extending the plantable area, as Breck said, along the length of the building, seems to me you could play with the elevation of the edge, you know, where it could, you know, be like a cone slice or something like that, where it has some more dynamic role to play at a 3D level, and isn't just simply, I mean, I know it's got plants in it, but there'll be times a year where they're not doing much, but if they even, you know, if it has a wandering edge or it drives up one side, you know, that where they, their playfulness is apparent, not just in plan, but in elevation and section. And I think the trees, putting the trees there is great. I just fear for Dominion's behavior. That's all.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah. Oh, and I like that retaining wall.
I know, thanks.
I'll
let you come put your handprint on it.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to agree with what's been said so far. I do think, well, except I want to see, you know, yeah, very tall, beautiful canopy trees on West Main, but if the power lines end up needing to stay, I think the Zelkova have done a good job of coexisting. So something of that scale, I think, would be appropriate if you keep the power lines. But yeah, that's My other concern, I've brought this up. So for the code building, they have sworn to me, they have promised to me that we're not going to end up with a bunch of yellow tape on all the edges of all the stair treads. I don't know if it's our zoning code or somewhere wedge steps are not allowed. And when they show up, they end up becoming tripping hazards. I think they're a wonderful landscape feature. So I just want you guys to make sure that, you know, these steps that die into the landscape don't become, again, covered in bright yellow tape, but stay a nice, elegant landscape feature.
Yeah, that's a great point. We don't want that.
I think that retaining wall edge actually helps alleviate that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of.
I said helps, I didn't say it did.
I mean, we don't have I don't know that, I'm not sure that we've got a full building code staff right now, so maybe you could slip it through, but I don't know. Yeah, something to think about.
Was that, I don't recall that being a problem at the dairy market facade. Did they end up having to put that on there? They do have the stairs that die into the slope. Okay,
so they got through that. Then maybe I'm remembering something old, but just want to make sure that doesn't become a problem. Yeah. No. And I assume, I mean, you're going to have handrails that are going to show up, and I guess to consider how those are placed. Yeah.
Carl.
I would concur with most of what I've heard so far. The only thing that I almost swallowed my tongue when Carl said something about Zelkovia. I would rather see that scale, but in a more native tree or one that's on the street tree list that the tree commission puts out.
Yes. Sorry, Jody. Yes.
That's it.
If there's nothing else on the landscape, and we can always come back to that, but the other question from Jeff was to look at the elevations. And I guess with his understanding that the north elevation is, on the right track already. And then the change in the material on the back.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to step in about the north elevation. Because Robert, could you go to page 10, please, of the architect's drawings? That one. I'm sorry, page 9. This looks better to me than what I'm hearing. It is what's actually meant. In that the recessed planes of the hyphens are darker and obviously more recessed, but the darkness is a symbol just to indicate some kind of texture. And what I'm hearing is that the texture that's desired at this point is subtle and not distinctive. And I would prefer to see something that's more distinctive in the difference, because I think this reads as we had intended, or we had stated all along, that we're trying to mimic the scale of the individual buildings that are the historic buildings that are still left on this part of West Main and that were here originally. That's my biggest worry about this, concern about this elevation.
Well, I appreciate your bringing that up, Jody.
So I have a follow-up to that, actually. It seems to me like one of your end elevations, which are quite asymmetrical, and as a result seem to have a lot of surface development. What page is that? Page 11. There's a sort of a playfulness in there, and it also harkens back to some of those images you showed us from some of those urban buildings with the multiple planes. I can't remember. Let's see your precedents. your precedent images on page 13, that I wonder if you really start playing with the level of detail in there, so it actually catches more shadow, is more idiosyncratic, and plays basically a different architectonic game than the quieter, very rectilinear facade. That possibly combined with darker materials, but also the fact that it would catch more shade and shadow and all that kind of stuff. That I think you have some clues in that east elevation, to my mind, that might enliven and at the same time distinguish those punchbacks. And then while we're on that subject, I'd like to just quick slide over to the top section of the residential block on the north side. I could see doing that in a completely different, like, glass, where it's much more of your belt line for your parapet runs around, and that whole upper piece reads as something that is truly set back and is perhaps much more modern and translucent. But I think that would, again, kind of help the read of the scale, and also not sort of, in a way, the brick on top of that feels a little heavy to me. And then I'll slide around to the very back. I could see putting some, if you put some brise soleil over that over the upper band of balconies, that starts reading as more porch-like, and I think softens that facade a bit on the south side. And that would start to break it up vertically without really a great deal of, you wouldn't be having to modulate surfaces or anything, but it would give you a scale breakdown, because that would start, those would start to read as sort of somewhat tower-like. So that's my 10 cents.
Okay, thank you.
I too am a little concerned about the subtlety and the thinness of the plane of the north elevation. It's not so much the elevation, but more the plan and the perspective views that would come from it. I'm concerned because I think almost every view from the pedestrian's point of view, or from driving down the road, that this is really going to look like a long building, because the plan changes are so subtle. I think there's a lot of, I think that as mentioned in the last meeting, the addition of those balcony railings, stepping that height down, the introduction of some different texture are some good techniques, but it's really riding on that line of whether this is meeting that SUP recommendation that the mass is breaking down. So it might be useful to include some more oblique perspectives in the package in the future. I think that's how this building will mostly be seen. And if the intention is to truly have the brick and the textured brick so similar in color, I wonder if a more radical technique, like making one of the bays the textured brick, might be worth considering. But I just continue to look for more depth in the facade, and I just worry that it keeps getting thinner and thinner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts from anyone? Are we all okay with the change to stucco or, well, ephes at the back? Okay.
What's it called?
That needs to be saved. That was memorable.
That was.
Jeff said it.
No, I think there needs to be a 5-second blank in the video recording of this. Thank you.
You didn't actually say it. You just we all
stumbled all around
heard it.
We're gonna check the minutes for that one.
Jerry said it for us. Thank you very much.
Only after you did. I did want to note that Mr. Zemer's joined us from, I think, Humpback Rock.
Jeff, you incited it. That's what, let's put it that way.
Okay. All right. Take credit for it.
Are we all still on board? The massing is still, well, I guess there seems to be some desire for more three-dimensionality in the front facade. But other than that, is the massing, we're good with this? Okay.
And I like the idea of doing something to make that top appear different, because that would actually drive that whole block down lower and it wouldn't feel quite all the piece. And then where there's a much more intensive detail in development and or some darker treatment of to me, it's more like the main facade so quiet and soft that maybe there's just a much more intensive brick detail and idiosyncratic treatment of those drop back pieces that makes them, kind of taking a look from Con or even some of the, the really wild brick you'd see on some of the old residential structures in New York or something like that, where it really has a degree of texture and detail that speaks to some, maybe the old church down the road or something.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any thoughts on the darker color around the retail entrances?
I read it as a material. I like the idea of it, the planters relating to it.
I think it's an interesting idea. I look forward to seeing how it's developed.
Any other concerns, or Jeff or Ann, any additional questions for us, or did we miss anything?
Not from my end.
I think that was great feedback for me. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah. I thank you all very much. I realize this is a little bit of a long drawn out process, but hopefully by the time we get to the approval, it's a very brief meeting. So for us, it feels productive and informative. So I thank you all very, very much.
So I'll quickly digress. Where do you stand? Where's things stand with the lighting on 600?
We've got to get there when we just have to make the final adjustment. I hope to do that next week. So we will have that done, and a note to the BAR that we're ready for you all to go and look at it probably the next week and a half.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff, for your willingness to continue to engage with us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very, very much. And oh, no, I have to formally request a deferral.
I move to accept the deferral.
And I second it.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Well, I will just call a vote really quick. Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. McClure?
Okay. Yep.
Mr. Lehindro?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger?
Aye.
Ms. Lewis?
Aye.
And Mr. Zemer?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
I have to go practice the word ethos. Well, have a good night. Thank you so much.
Really fast, 10 times.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Does anybody need a break? I saw one thumbs up. Okay, so
could we just do
I need a break.
5 minutes really quickly? Yeah.
I need a break.
Do it. Let's do it.
oh,
Let's do it.
James, yeah. All right.
Okay. So reconvene at 7:25 or 7:30.
Let's go for 7:25. Everyone okay with that?
Okay.
5 minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
James needed a break from climbing up that mountain.
I'm watching for the snow.
That looks like Black Rock, isn't it?
I have no idea. It's just one of the backgrounds that they set up for us on the UVA Zoom. So
Oh, cool.
looks better than my bedroom.
It kind of looks like Ragged Mountain a little bit.
It might be. I assume it's one of the local tops.
Ah, man.
What's up, Jeff?
Hey, how are you? Am I eating in your ear? Thought I muted.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's what that is.
Now it's a lot going on. Hopefully there's going to be, when we come out of this, whatever the heck it is, there's going to be lots of construction happening.
There is lots of construction happening.
I know. I walked yesterday and just, I went in the office and I was going to print the those awards. All right, so we have to make a commitment, and I'll walk them over to your place, and they say, "Here, sign them," and then get them to me, and whatever. And but it was not to be. Just the It's the, as you know, it's always the little things. It's always the poo coming up from the cellar, right? Yeah. What happened? What was the, I mean, I had almost the same exact thing happen at my house. Fortunately, it didn't reach the
my
backup
office. Oh yeah, I don't want to talk about that on TV.
Yeah, because when they, because that was
God.
Yeah, 3.5 years ago when the guy came out. Yeah, and he had to dig up my whole front yard.
Oh.
And I know I told you that story because we always had rats coming and going out of this hole. My neighbor and I would always pour sand down the hole. Oh. I mean, this is like over the last 20 years, the damn rats, it just became our fun thing to do. Hey, I'm going to Lowe's, get a bag of sand, we'll pour it down the hole. Well, it just so happened that the hole went to the sewer line and, and so the guy dug up my whole front yard and all this stuff. He's like, man, I don't know what's going on. It's like this rocks and sand in there. And I'm like, huh.
Rat trap's a lot cheaper, Jeff.
Well,
he's down there, Jeff.
Yeah, a little. But for 20 years, I thought I was sticking it to the rats. What they were laughing at me.
I got one last week, man.
I get them, and I mean, I'll get, but one always gets in the house, and you can always, I mean, you just hear it, and you just get to the point you're like, I don't know what to do. You put the stuff out front, you put the stuff outside. And then
in this town, at least downtown, they live in the sewer. So my office, we like to say there were squirrels in the ceiling. It wasn't squirrels.
Oh no, man, squirrels don't run up and down in there. So yeah, it's been, I've done my best. People have chickens. I mean, everybody composts. It's just the way it is. But and as long as it's not a snake, that's sort of my thing. We have some big snakes downtown. We had a black snake skin that was taller than me about 10 years ago.
Yeah, but they eat the rats.
I know.
Someone is watching this on Facebook right now in absolute terror.
Yeah, like what's going on? Now, I always say
it's historic character.
Yeah. I don't mind snakes. I just don't want to see the end of it. It's part of the old house, but yeah, you can tell when it's a rat or a mouse that's died because a mouse is like 3 or 4 days and a rat stinks for like 2 or 3 weeks. No,
I had those like cheese sticks that are wrapped in prosciutto.
Yeah,
cut a little piece of that off. Perfect bait.
I've tried everything, and then. One got into my duct work. I don't know what happened. I was like, oh, great, he's going to die in there. I'll never find him.
That would be awful.
But, I've tried the bait
right now.
Yeah, she's probably got up at her place up on the hill. Yeah, I mean, everybody says, I'll give you a cat. And it's like, and the funny thing is, when we bought the house, we moved in, or we actually signed on it on Halloween, 1998. And, I don't know, it was a huge party. I don't know, Sherry was probably came. I think everyone in North Downtown came, but I got into the house and found just this desiccated, mummified cat, and pulled it out, put it on the front porch, put a candle next to it, and the woman that sold me the house goes, that's where it went. I went, what? She goes, hi, cat.
Oh
no. All right, Jody Breck.
Yeah.
You break it.
You hear me? Turn your monitor on so we can start.
Jeff, was it flat?
Do you bring it out every year?
Stop.
You know what? I lost track of it. It's yeah.
Okay, everyone's back. Here we go.
Unpost yourself. Post it yourself.
I had to put my mask on after listening to you all.
All right. Well, one night, I'll tell you guys the scariest ghost story of Charlottesville.
When we're allowed to meet in person again, you can have an after meeting discussion of the scariest story in Charlottesville.
Right, but that one happened in the county office building, so I've yet to see any ghosts here.
Not tonight, Jeff.
Yeah.
Good. Let's offend everybody tonight.
Yeah. We do like ghost stories in this town. I think there's one in Jennifer and Blakely's house, though. We're going to find out here.
actually, somebody did a really good job of estimating our agenda tonight for the times. So let's maybe we can continue to stay on track.
Roll through it,
Robert. So the next agenda item is 636 Park Street.
I do want to say before anything, Jennifer, I got the check in the mail, so thank you very much. No, well, good. The U.S. Postal Service, it's just
slow.
Kudos to them.
Jeff,
all right.
unpost it yourself.
What's that?
We can't see you.
Oh.
Unpost it yourself.
That's good. Unpost it myself. Yeah. Sorry. See, I'm looking at everybody else except myself, and there I am. Okay. So what we have before us is a COA request for 636 Park Street. This is in the North Downtown ADC district. This is a 1950s colonial revival style home that was constructed in 1950 by a gentleman named Harry Munson. This is a request before you to install a new fence around the perimeter of the property, and it'll be set behind an existing hedge that's there. Staff, we didn't find any issues with it and recommended approval, but I know, with fences and particularly along an arterial or the primary road like we have with Park Street, I wanted to bring it to the BAR, and so I did not recommend it for a consent agenda. But again, we see no issues with this, and I hand it over to you all. And any questions for me? And now, Jennifer, I'll hand it to you.
Okay. My screen's over here, so if it looks like I'm not looking at you, I am. But is it okay if I share my screen? I can show you a photo. Or can you see what I submitted? Yep.
Yeah, Jennifer. So apparently I was talking with our communications guy earlier, and the city's policy is just to let hosts and co-hosts share their screen.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'll show you what I have, and if
Sure.
There are any other images, maybe you could email them to me.
Okay, and I can hold them up too, but I doubt you can see them. Yeah, so if they go to the next page of that. Okay, yes. So it's hard to see because this is a bit distorted, but the one on the left, the wood fence, is the one we prefer for a few reasons. One, we plan on eventually doing something to our backyard, and we want a privacy fence in our backyard, so we would like those two fences to match. This fence, the photo that you showed of our house, the front of our house, is a really old one. That's when the box was there. I don't know if you've driven by our house recently, but we have skip laurels out that are probably 14 feet high. So the fence is not really going to be visible. Our neighbor next door at, let's see, there's a 632. I don't know if you can see that. That's not going to work, but
that's the house. You reviewed a couple years ago, so very familiar with it.
Yeah, so that guy has a wooden fence exactly like this. The apartment 2 doors down has a wooden fence. It's a more modern wooden fence. They use it as privacy for their patios. And then on the corner of Park and Farish, they also have a wood fence. Theirs is technically wood and stone, which is a little more fancy, but we really are hoping, for many reasons, we would prefer the look of the wood. It's more cost effective, and just feel like it would be more preferable to our style.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
There are currently 0 members of the public here.
All right, that's easy. All right, questions from the BAR.
So Jeff, when you said you approve this, your staff report says you prefer the metal. Is that correct? Or are you saying that you would recommend approval of the 6-foot wooden privacy fence?
4 foot. 4 foot.
4 foot. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not throwing Robert under the bus here, but he worked on this.
I wrote the staff report.
So I'm.
Well, I'm referring to what you just said. You said you recommend approval, so I'm asking, what do you recommend approval of? How about that?
caught me fuzzing out here.
When I wrote the staff report, I think either option is appropriate, but I just found the metal fence to be more appropriate.
Thank you.
And there was we had discussed this when I talked early on with Jennifer, that these are set behind those that hedge, and it has grown. I mean, those things shot up out of there, so there is a good screen. And I had offered that as a condition that BAR might request that should those be removed for whatever reason, then that sort of changes the how this fence might be viewed in whatever form it takes. But it's that was one of the things that I felt was a mitigating factor to what they selected. So I offer that as a recommendation if there's any concern about the wood.
And I had kind of put in my submittal that if for some reason we have a skip laurel that dies, we will immediately replace it. We really do love them. We love it for the privacy. It kind of tamps down the noise from Park Street. So we plan on keeping those forever.
Is the intention to paint the fence?
It is. They have told me that you have to leave it for, I don't know the number of weeks, but I think 4 to 6 weeks until you paint it, so that it gets used to the environment. But yes, the intention is to paint it. I would like to just paint it the color of our siding. We have siding that's above it and in the back of the house. And so it would just be to match that, which is something you guys have approved before.
Can I ask, Jennifer, since we weren't able to see the examples, but you mentioned several other wooden fence examples in the vicinity. Are any of those in the front yard?
They are. So
could you
two of them are. I don't know if, so I don't know if this helps at all. So can you see that fence right there? Sorry, I can't hold it up very well. I just had shoulder surgery, so my arm doesn't work very well.
That's great.
So that's my next door neighbor's fence. Like,
but that's not the front yard on the street.
It's in the front yard, but it's not on the street side. It's on the street side, but it's still in the front yard. Like it's visible from the.
I guess I should ask: are any of those on the street?
Like you mean on the edge of the street?
Right.
No, because I guess the wood of the I'm looking at the pictures of the apartments, and they're also set off from the street.
Yeah, that's been more typical, is that the privacy fences behind the front facade of the house are wood, and the fences along Park Street are typically the wrought iron or steel.
Yeah, you can see it there to the right. So that's the white. Yep. So that guy right there matches. And then you can see how tall our bushes are. I mean, the other thing is that the metal is double the cost. And if you're not going to see them and it's not something we prefer, I really would really hope that we could do the wood, just because aesthetically it's just more my vibe.
There is a wood picket fence at approximately 717 Park.
Yeah.
Right up against the curb.
I'm not familiar with that property. Could you describe it?
Is it? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought someone had Google Street View up. It's further north. It's a new house on the corner of what's this street? Lions Court.
One with that really jammed side yard, front yard, right?
It's a split level on the corner of Lions Court and Park.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it's not 4 feet.
No, it looks maybe
it 3. Undulates, for lack of a better word. They put it up just a little while ago, and I don't know if it came before the board. Right there. Is that?
No,
Yeah.
I don't think it ever did.
I don't remember seeing that. No.
Yeah, there. It's picket, right? Yeah. And 3 feet, you think?
That looks about 3. Yeah, it's not 4. You're right on that.
I mean, the skip laurel on the left of its own devices actually gets quite tall.
So I think since there's no public, let's just move into discussion. We can keep asking questions. I've Skip Laurel. It gets us in trouble because it actually violates our guidelines, and it a lot of people use it as a excuse to put in their own shrubs that are, you know, more than 4 feet tall on the sidewalk. We've had a number of properties come to us asking to put in a privacy screen right on the street. So we can't make you take it down, but I do wish you cut it shorter.
We actually got that approved through you guys to put that up.
Yeah.
And they were tiny. I didn't realize they were going to get that big, but that was approved.
I'm looking at the picture from 2012 on Google Street View, and yeah, they're tiny.
They're teensy. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's but it's not just you guys. I mean, you see these hedges up and down Park Street, and some of them they popped up, you know, without full board approval. Maybe they went through staff or something, but they're anyways, it's
directly across the street, Dr. Kate's old house. I mean, that hedge has been like that for 20 years.
Yeah, Grayson's house has boxwoods that are even higher than the Skip Laurels.
Yeah, so that's really common in North Downtown. Jennifer, I haven't met you. I live about a quarter of a mile from you, though.
I was like, oh my gosh, hi.
and I've lived in the neighborhood for almost 25 years. I'll embarrass myself, but I do appreciate everything you guys have done with that house, because I remember 2 owners ago what it looked like, and you put the shutters on, and that front yard always was just not right. And once you put the Skip Laurel in, it really looks great. I mean, everything you've done, and I would almost say it's restoring the house. I don't think you've done anything that's not in keeping with the character of the house, but you've certainly made it really attractive. I love that little widow's walk, or whatever it's called, the balcony, and you've shaped that up a little bit. It was in bad shape. So my problem is that I don't really see, first of all, our guidelines at which we're supposed to follow. At 11 on new fences says privacy fences may be appropriate in side yards or rear yards were not visible from the street, which sort of presumes that privacy fences shouldn't be on primary streets. And you've got 2 primary streets, unfortunately. I don't really see any other privacy fences up and down Park at all, which would prohibit somebody at street level from seeing a house. And I'm not saying there isn't a lot of landscaping, and depending on topo, there are some stone walls where you wouldn't necessarily see it standing on the sidewalk, but you'd see it across the street. But you know, the engagement of our neighborhood with each other is what makes North Downtown super special. And the fact that, you know, I know Jeff and have known him for a while, and I know my neighbors, and the privacy fence is really antithetical, not just in our guidelines, but also I think in the way that this neighborhood is developed. There are a good many metal fences, but you can see right through them, see the structure. They don't really act as privacy fences. Bud Treacle's house is another one that wasn't mentioned. It doesn't go around the periphery. He tells the story, he's given the fences as compensation for legal services, and, you know, finally got you guys to approve it because they were free and he thought they were cool, and I don't know, from some junkyard in the county, but he wanted to put them up. And but we really just don't have fences that really wall off the street engagement, and that would be around the periphery of the property. Like, you're right, the next door neighbor has a fence that's back at the end of their driveway, and the Park Lane apartments, you know, have fences that are not in the front yard and that screen from within the complex. But I can't support the wooden privacy fence. I certainly could support a 4-foot metal fence. And I'm sorry to say that I'm your neighbor and I feel this way, but I think our guidelines are pretty clear. So I couldn't support it either on the Evergreen or on the Park Street side.
So on the Evergreen side, if we do our backyard, are you saying we can't have wood back there if we want to impose our backyard?
Yeah, the guidelines say side or rear yard. So I would think you could use it on the rear yard if there's any way to, you know, to differentiate. And I haven't walked down Evergreen, you know, recently. You can we don't really have a view here And it wasn't really clear whether you wanted it all around, you know, around the whole yard or whether just on the street side. So maybe a clarification.
Just the front yard. We have a puppy. We got a puppy during a pandemic, and
I saw your puppy. So cute. I saw it.
Crazy. So we need a fence to fence him in. And so this is, I don't even want a fence, but this is where this has all happened, is that we have a puppy. And yeah, so
you're right at the busy street there too.
Right.
So.
And we looked at doing an electric fence, but our vet said with a lab, like no dice, they'll escape, and then that's no good. So then we came to this physical fence idea.
So can I ask, so, well, when we talk about a privacy fence, I mean, typically in my mind's eye is something, you know, 6-8 feet tall and solid. And so not necessarily wood being, I mean, more the height and the enclosure of it. Am I understanding from the board that wood is not preferred on the perimeter?
I think we need to discuss this and see if everyone agrees with Sherry. For the definition of privacy fence, Jeff, I agree with you. But whether it's, I mean, I think, yeah, we need to see what everyone thinks as far as, so all, you know, it's, our guideline does say, use materials that relate to materials in the neighborhood, take cues from nearby historic fences and walls. So it is true that the majority of the fences, at least the historic ones, are metal. But I think we need to see where everybody stands to be certain.
Well, I would just also add, in relationship to wood, our guidelines really speak about wood picket fences, not wood sort of opaque fences or some walls, unless it's a privacy fence. And I guess to that end, I think I definitely agree with Sherry. I think that the metal fence is consistent and an almost neighborhood defining feature related to the landscapes along Park Street. And to Jennifer's question, I think it would be very appropriate and I'd support a wooden privacy fence as long as it were behind the front plane of the house as it faces Park Street.
But just remember, Breck, this is on a corner, so I think that was where the question comes in.
Yeah, even so, I think that the character of the street changes. The facade of the house facing Evergreen is a side facade, and I think it would.
Yeah, I agree with Breck. I think the fence definition changes at the plane of the front of the house, and it can become a privacy fence from that point back.
So we're clear. I mean, is there anybody who would accept a wooden 4-foot fence in the front yard?
And 4 feet is just an arbitrary number. Like if it gets shorter, is that better? Or if there's a different version of a wood fence? Or is it just wood in general? No dice.
If you have a lab, you probably want some feet.
I mean, I think to Breck's point, I was just saying, I think to Breck's point, you know, more of a picket style fence that has some perforation to it would be more acceptable in the front, in my opinion. It's not, it gets away from being a privacy fence. I mean, the fence that was shown in the example is really more of a wall.
Yeah, it's a really big picture.
It's a solid plane.
Solid.
So in general, I kind of agree with Breck and Sherry in terms of, I do agree the iron fence would look better and stay in character of the neighborhood to the front yard. And I also agree that a privacy fence, possibly even a taller one for the rear yard, would be appropriate. But I'd also be willing probably to consider more of a picket style fence if wood was desired for the front yard.
I concur with
James. He's right.
I'm sorry, Ron, I spoke over you. What'd you say?
Sorry, I agree with James. A picket fence would work. There is already an example of one down the street, and why not go in that direction?
Yeah, although the example of the one down the street with the boards is still a little too opaque. A picket fence that is open, that doesn't prohibit views, that would be fine in my mind.
and yet would restrain a dog, right?
Yeah.
So I guess if I'll talk to my husband, sorry, he's playing soccer, and see about the metal versus picket. But if we go metal 4 feet, is it okay? And then if we go picket, should I just send an email to Jeff with a photo of a 4 foot picket?
Let's go down. If you go down, I know the same fence that Chris put in next door to you. Yeah. And if you go down to the corner of Farish and Park, Valentine House, they just did a metal railing on the back of that. And I watched, I saw the guys with maybe a day or two. It kind of just went right in. So I don't know what the cost of that was. I'm trying to find the information to send you that.
Okay, thanks.
If that helps.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I can also send you the guy that did it, and you maybe speak with him about who he did talk to.
Jeff, there's also one on Third, the stone house on 3rd Street, or the Park Plaza and Confusion Corners, I call it. It's an old stone. There are 2 stone houses right on 3rd. But the one on the corner has a picket fence. It also has like a trellis above the entryway, but it's pretty wide. They painted it in white. I mean, there aren't many examples in our neighborhood where people have fences in front yards.
Okay.
Now, definitely not privacy or opaque or not see-through, but even that picket fence is it's a very, very small yard. It's almost like too much fence for 4 square feet, but that might be one that Jennifer wants to look at. I was thinking of this one, and then I was thinking of the one,
that's the one behind me.
That's a smaller one. Yeah, and I was thinking of the 2 stone houses that are further. You jag over here and then go up 3rd. So,
interestingly, in the 1880s, my house had that fence there. Let's all go through and drive through Charlottesville. But the other wood fence we did was I can't remember the gentleman's name up there at. If you take a left here at Hedge, go to the top of the street up on Park. We proved that a couple of years ago. But what I would suggest, maybe it sounds like this is a deferral while we clarify some things.
It's 440 3rd Street Northeast. If somebody can Google map that.
I mean, 4th Street and the Hedge have a couple of picket fences, just for the record, right? According to you, that 4th and Hedge.
I couldn't hear you, Tim. Could you repeat that?
At the corner of 4th and Hedge, there are quite a few picket fences.
Yeah, I do think it's important to distinguish a little bit. I mean, Park Street's a little bit different than some of those other streets. I mean, there's a different scale of the house. It's a different approach into the city. It's a different set of landscapes.
But this is a pretty attractive fence, I would say. I'm not pushing this one. I'm just saying there are nice, that picket one, and this is all wood. It's very attractive. And I think it would definitely keep a dog out, maybe with a little bit more height if it's a lab.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't unengage the house. You feel like you still see the house, they see us.
Yeah.
You go by, it's well constructed.
What house number is that? That's on Hedge?
It's 3rd Street. It's
440.
440.
Yeah,
3rd Street.
All right, north. Oh, I see it at the top. So would either this style or the metal style be okay or no? Because ideally I don't want to defer, only because, like I said, we have a crazy puppy and the fence guys they're all out like 4 weeks. So if I defer again, then we're all going nuts over here.
I'm going to offer that I would be willing to approve a metal fence or a wood picket fence that is, of a, somewhat transparent, that allows some visibility through it. And that picket fence would just need to be submitted to Jeff to confirm that our intent. That would be my suggestion.
I'll second the chair's motion.
Oh, can I quickly say something?
Quite a motion.
And can we settle on a height, please?
Yes.
No more than 4 feet, right? Okay.
That's in our guidelines.
So I just had a quick question. I mean, if it's there's a 4-foot fence, but the other question I have is, you know, does it actually, should it be in front of the skip laurel as opposed to behind them?
There's not a ton of room, I will tell you. The skip laurels are to the edge of the sidewalk, so I actually don't think there's room to get a fence in there.
Right, short of cutting the skip laurel down. I was just wondering.
I think it simplifies things if it goes behind. I think we've asked for that before in situations on Park Street, where if they're going to put something, well, in the case of something opaque, we've asked them to set it behind, you know, shrubs or something. But
I mean, I was just going to say that my one comment about a wood fence is that, you know, the house is a newer house. It doesn't have the same level of detail as a lot of the older houses do, but it does have that porch with it has picket top and bottom. It kind of makes sense to me that it would relate to the house to have a wood picket fence, frankly. So.
And so this is going to go to Jeff, but I think when we say picket, we're, you know, we've offered some examples, but basically we're just looking for something that is not fully opaque.
Correct.
Okay.
For me, that's too far to not know what this fence is. I would suggest, my proposal would be to approve a metal fence, and if the applicant decides to propose a wood fence instead, that we consider that design when we have the detail.
Okay.
I agree with the way Carl was going in the direction first, that we should consider both as a possible COA now, subject to approval by Jeff, looking at the aesthetics of it, and not defer this if we can avoid that.
So maybe we just need to make a motion and see who would accept that.
You want to withdraw your motion, Carl?
Do I want to withdraw it?
Yeah.
I'll make the motion then.
Or we can do a straw poll now and see who would be willing to go for it. So
Ron's ready. Ron's ready.
Anyone else?
But you have to withdraw yours if Ron makes his.
I thought Ron was.
I thought we were doing a straw poll.
Nobody cares.
And I'm so bad with Robert's rules.
That's I have 2 motions on the floor. That's all I'm trying to avoid.
So I want to know who would be willing to approve a metal fence or a picket fence, just with the stipulation that both fences are under 4 feet and that the picket fence would be not fully opaque. We can set some level of transparency if we want, but so Sherry, myself, Ron, were you a yes? Okay.
Wondering if we could,
Andy?
I wonder if we can ask that if it's a wooden picket fence, that it stylistically relates to the railings on the front porch of the house.
That makes sense.
Okay, let me, anyone got a picture up?
I just glanced at it.
There you go, evergreen.
It's sort of similar to that one on, I guess, 3rd or whatever that somebody showed.
And what bothers me about the way you phrased that, Carl, is that you say mostly, not mostly opaque. I would say mostly not opaque.
Right.
Mostly transparent.
Yes.
Okay.
I think if you pick up off of the existing picket spacing and design on the house, you got something that you can see through and it relates to the house.
I agree, and I like that. It is it's a railing design versus a fence design, which they may find costly. If we want to hem them in on that, we can, but
the railing
I'm
on
perfectly fine with a traditional picket fence as well.
Yeah, the railing on the balcony is a very tight picket, or whatever one calls it. I mean, it would definitely keep a dog out of there. If you look at the picture in our packet, it's page 92. It's the picture that's on the staff report.
Right.
It's pretty, those are pretty tight. I mean.
But again, my point is that it's a, I don't know what that would cost versus a traditional picket fence like you saw in the front yard on that crazy intersection.
I mean, do you want to make them have a custom picket fence as opposed to going and finding something similar to that?
Not necessarily.
I feel like this would be custom if we required them to match what's on the porch.
Okay.
That's my worry.
I think they match the spacing and size of the pickets and call it a day. And then then they're applied to the back of a rail that go past it. You know, it's built like a traditional picket fence, but you're picking up on the scale of the railing. And the only thing that might actually use the detail of the railing is the gate, because that does need to have some rigidity to it.
Jennifer, are you following this? Or are you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I'm guessing I'd have to have like a top cap and a bottom cap just to make it. I've got to pull up the picture of 443rd as well, just to look at that, just while I have it in my head. But yes, I do, and I can send. I mean, I can send you guys. I can send Jeff photos once I talk to my husband after this. I'm just pulling this up, 3rd Street Northeast, just to look at this again. But yes, I'm fine with either of those options. Either the picket that's similar to our railing above our porch, or the metal.
Okay.
And I can email Jeff once I talk to my husband, and then just let you guys know.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to help you out, but I feel like we're I don't want to hem you in at the same time with okay. I can try, or if anyone else wants to give that a try, I will give it a try. I miss making motions. All right, so having considered the standards set forth in the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I moved to find the proposed fence at 636 Park Street satisfies the BRS criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in North Downtown ADC district. And the BAR approves either a metal fence per the application or a wood picket fence to be painted, both fences to be under 4 feet tall. And if you go with a wood fence, the picket spacing should be similar to, or should approximate the spacing of the pickets in your porch railing.
That sounds totally fair.
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. I will call a vote. Mr. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. McClure? Ms. Lewis?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Lehendro?
Aye.
And Mr. Gastinger?
Sorry, no.
Thank you. So that's a vote of 7 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sorry about the, I think we we stretched that out, but hopefully that helped.
Okay, thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it.
Jennifer, I'm going to send you some information here. The what was his name? Seth Liskey is 534 Park Street.
Perfect.
And it was, he's got in here at least what he showed me. So, you know, I don't know, given the speed with which they put that up, it's, I don't know. I don't know how to compare, but let's just stay in contact with me and let me know how it goes. All right.
I will.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
You too. Enjoy the ice.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Well, don't bring that up.
So regarding the next application, the applicant isn't here, and I hadn't heard anything from them. But
this is the painted brick, correct?
Yeah, and I you know, I just,
yes,
this is one that we circulated, and there was general, I mean, general support for it. I just felt like it was, I didn't put it on consent just because it was on the corner painting brick, and I felt like, you know, maybe we should give it the, you know, an official review, if you will, a more formal review.
I would be willing to give this one a try without the applicant. Is everyone else okay with that? Okay.
Yes.
See where it goes. If we have to defer it, we will. So do we need a staff report?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still
That's
thinking.
Right.
I got too many things. Now I'm trying to figure out which thing to click to get back to you guys. By the way, see this gigantic, well, we can't. So I do have this monitor bigger than a widescreen TV. So that is helping with the, all right, folks.
I don't know how anyone can do this without two screens.
I don't know how I'm doing it with being in my house for the last 12 months, or 11 months. So we are hitting that, just think of it. We've all gone through a pandemic together. We'll be friends for life.
Speak for yourself.
And no one's been voted off the island yet.
Was that Jody?
We're not through just yet, Jeff.
Okay, this is a COA request for 1331 West Main Street, which is actually in the West Main Street ADC district, extends down to the corner there. This is a circa 1965 building. I knew it as Cafe Europa when I came for grad school. It's now the Fig Restaurant. It was, Robert added here this great, what used to be the University Diner, home of the famous Grills with donut and ice cream sandwich.
Yes.
That was probably back in the day when they still had Easters at Mad Bull. But
yes, it was. I actually ate there.
They now serve them at the White Spot.
Okay.
If anybody wants to ever try a Grills with.
I love it. The West Main facade features decorative cinder block. Nice touch there, Robert. Decorative cinder block on a covered entrance that was original to the building's construction. There was, back in 2013, the BAR did approve the exterior painting of the cinder block, and there was some, I think, some cement boards that were painted. The applicant is requesting to paint the brick that you see, and this includes the brick on that front wall that you see with a whitewash, and they're willing to comply with whatever recommendation that the BAR would have on that. And then there is some of the non brick that they'll be painting in the dark gray color. We recommend proposal or approval with some conditions. And while design guidelines discourage painting unpainted masonry, the building's relative lack of architectural distinction and recent construction date merits some exception, and that is that that typically if it's a brick building prior to the 1920s, 1930s, simply because of the nature of the masonry, you don't want to put paint on it. So they're relatively a contemporary building, so that's not a problem with the paint as far as mechanical properties of the brick. Aesthetically, the owner wants to sort of brighten this up. It's got a little bit of a kind of a used back in the corner look, and that's kind of the intent here. So we recommended approval with some strong recommendation that the brick and mortar be repaired prior to any whitewashing, and that we want to recommend that they use a whitewash, a mineral paint suitable for painting on masonry surfaces. And with that, that's what I had. If you all had any questions for me, standing in as the applicant.
We have a total of 0 attendees from the public, so I don't think there's public comment.
So Jeff, in 5 years, when it changes hands and there's another owner, and since the brick has already been whitewashed,
I know.
what's to keep the new owner from coming in there and painting it a solid white? And then after that owner, someone comes in and paints it a solid another color.
I think those are legitimate questions. And, you know, this is where, you know, something, a lime paint, you know, and nothing more than traditional whitewash would be preferable to any sort of paint or product that you get at the, you know, commercial product.
But once it's painted, be it lime, be it alkyd, be it anything, then we set we cross the line.
Yeah, I would, yeah, I would say, yeah, you cross the line.
Painted.
So I guess, Jeff, my question, you said that our guidelines discourage painting unpainted masonry. Is that the exact verbiage?
I don't think
I guess I'm wondering, could you read the exact verbiage? I think
do not paint unpainted masonry.
That sounds, that doesn't sound like discouraging. That sounds like a direction.
And it's, I'm offering it in terms of if a traditional whitewash, which I don't call painting, and we have, the BAR has historically for some time considered the painting of relative to age of the brick and condition. So it is a recommendation, and you all can, you know, sort of choose your poison here. I think from our, and I going back to somewhat of what we discussed, you know, I think a month or two ago when I floated it. This is why I didn't put it on a consent agenda. But I'm not gonna fall on my sword for this one. My preference would have been to not paint the front wall. There's relatively little brick, and I'm trying to find the photograph that I had. There's absolute minimal brick, and on the building, it's the, you know, the wall sort of changed things a little bit for me.
I would say, just in my experience, it's been very seldom, very few examples when we've allowed painting of brick, but it only in very inconsequential locations or more contemporary look, and which this might qualify. It's pretty awful brick all around. It's nothing pretty distinguishing about it.
And to Jody's question about who's going to prevent them from painting something else sometime down the road, the answer is the BAR.
Right.
They don't have to come to a BAR to paint a wall.
I think if we approve whitewash, we're approving paint. We're approving forever paint. So it's
so it's a maintenance in the future, and they don't have to come to us.
Right.
Right. It becomes painted masonry.
But it doesn't become purple painted masonry, does it? Or does it?
No, that actually the color does have to go to Jeff. So down, you know, a few blocks down, right across from the university, I forget what the business was, but I know we approved almost a complete demolition of a brick facade, and the part that remains is completely painted now. You know, the side of I forget. No, that's stucco. I was going to say the side of the Graduate Hotel where the mural is, but I guess that was stucco. I can't remember. There's paint that wraps around the corner and paints and covers the brick. It's new brick. They put that brick on there after they renovated the building. But we've definitely made exceptions before. And I think, you know, for me, if this building came to us for a demolition permit, I think it might have a good chance of being approved. And I cannot deny painting brick that I would, you know, allow to be demolished.
Boy, do I disagree with that, because to me it's a characteristic 1960s design, and it's really it's perfectly appropriate for when it was built.
And therefore we should maintain historically drab, useless architecture.
Useless and drab's in the eye of the whole beholder, Ron.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess that's really the question. Is this, do we collectively believe, or is there enough belief that this is an architecturally significant building? That's really the question.
I think we've voted to demolish much more significant buildings in the past. So that was where that comment came from.
I mean, sort of like, you know, the, what's the, on West Main, the fast food place, the chicken place with the W roof.
Mel's.
Yeah, that to me is an architecturally significant building. I love that building. It's it's got a whole lot of character, and you know, I wouldn't want to see anything happen to that. But you know, this one, you know, I guess, is it architecturally significant? That's really the question. It doesn't feel to me as though it's super well defined, but then again, it's such a messy picture, it's kind of hard to tell. And it's also overwhelming what's going on.
I'm looking at the picture that Jack Abgott did back in 1980. That's in the survey report.
Mm-hmm.
And by God, I went to school with Jack in the Masters of Architectural History. But that's a distinctive, interesting, textured concrete block. The flat roof. It's a great classic 50s, 60s design.
That's actually where the mistake is that they painted that block.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look at all the same, Jody. I agree with you. I love the look of that that photo for the landmark.
They also got some plantings in front of that block now that screen it, which is unfortunate.
And if the purpose is to make this stand out, it seems to me there are other ways to do that besides just painting the brick.
Cleaning it.
I mean, the sign on the original University Diner could almost be, that could have been a character defining feature. It's not there anymore, of course, but.
Yep.
I wonder why they haven't put a sign back up. It seems like, I mean, you could.
Probably too big for the signage ordinance.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, rooftop signs are frowned upon.
I just wonder if I think I mean, I think that the elegance of that little facade is in its proportion and its composition, not in its. There's not really. I don't know that the brick. I don't think that giving it a whitewash really changes that. If anything, it might make it a little bit more legible, given all the stuff that's come up in the meantime.
They want to freshen it up. I mean, that was the word they used, and I don't think they're looking to spend a lot of money. I mean, I'm looking at the street view image, which is good. I don't. If you are looking at it, I don't know what in the world is on the roof.
So put some interesting plants in. So do something. Planters. Put some colorful umbrellas out in the front. Are
the
planters going to change?
Nothing was said about that, and this is where. So I think I mean, first and foremost, and agreeing with all of you, the brick. There's some problems, and it needs to be stabilized. Whatever, what you probably have are. Well, I guess the planters look like they're just capped on top of this, so it's not anything internal. But even at the back wall, it's a really an interesting, unique, the thin brick. I mean, you can see the coursing of it, and I mean, but I don't know what's going on. You can see again, not the picture you're looking at, but I think they want to do something about the brick They just don't know what. And so the next step is to whitewash it. But I'm you know, we're not here to design the thing for them, but we certainly can, in looking at this, you know, mention other things, you know, what is going on with that wooden cap? What is, you know, you can, if you want to paint this, you need to fix the brick first. So there are opportunities to request some things that
if they designed a different canopy and painted that
canopy's coming off,
that awful green with a color, with something a little bit not a neutral gray, but a color, could be pretty interesting.
I mean, I would say that the wood needs to come off the top of the walls. That looks like crap. And the one thing I would wonder about would, you know, would we let them do something with the railing? I know that railing was there, but the railing actually seems most inappropriate to that building. But that's, you know, do you let them do something with the railing and change the paint? I mean, the storefronts are different than what was there, obviously. I think the really unfortunate thing was that they painted the block. But, you know, that kind of queers the deal on all levels.
Well, let's turn it around. Let's have them take the paint off.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the corner, you can actually see the block. There's some sheet that covers the block.
Yeah, yeah, this.
Maybe the thing to do is clean the thing, literally clean the thing up. And like that underside of that canopy, that looks like oily, formerly white paint. I don't know what is going on in there. That's a very strange color. But the canopy's bad. The planters are bad. The fact that they painted the block. I mean, if that's just like hardy board on top of the block, you know, yank it off there.
There's a lot of things that we could offer them that they could do to this. We have an application for whitewashing the brick and painting the green. And maybe we don't have enough votes for that. And if we don't, we can kill it real fast. I would vote in favor of the application. I think that Jeff's note for the repairing the masonry needs to be specified that it's, you know, they should tuck point with, you know, Portland cement. They need to use proper mortar. But other than that, I would be willing to approve this. I don't know where others stand.
I'm a little bit in concurrence with Carl. I think the character defining features from the submission aren't there anymore. And it's not the same building. And I think it was Breck or Carl that said the brick is not the predominant material here. It really is a storefront look that was much more interesting, I think, in a previous, you know, several iterations before. I would support this, I think, you know, with the caveat that the brick be repaired. You know, I just don't think it's our job. I mean, I agree there's a lot that can be done here, but that's not our job to design, you know, be the designers for this property owner or proprietor, frankly. So
I guess where I struggle with it is that the wording of our motion says that it meets the BAR's criteria. And the BAR's criteria says do not paint unpainted masonry. And so if you're going to word it that way, then I'm not going to be able to support it.
The reason that I told Jeff that this could not be on the consent agenda is if we do approve it, we need to state why.
Right.
We need to state why it's an exception. And my thought on why we even exist at all as a board is because, I mean, you could, if everyone had to follow the guidelines word for word, Jeff could handle everything. I feel like our purpose is
so moved. No, I'm just kidding.
The brick is a surround to me. It's not the primary material. It's a surround. And that's what I would say. I would feel differently if, for instance, and I'm looking at the last page of our packet, if we had a submission to paint the historic building to the right, which is 2 stories and has a lot of brick on it. I think that's what our guidelines are going to. But this, I see the brick as a trim. It was a material that was used as a trim in in a storefront sort of restaurant-y looking building a half a century ago, which just lost its defining features. That's where I am.
I think we have also. I'm sorry. I was just going to say this is a good example of it's a building that's owned by someone and they're leasing it to someone who uses that as a restaurant. So it's that struggle of a business that sees a way to liven up the space and a building owners that owns real estate. That's some of the tension I suspect here. But I just was going to offer while you guys continued. Having had several conversations with the owner of the restaurant, they're very much open to. Like I'm writing a note here to say to him, why don't you take a look behind that wall, and if that's just a panel there, that's something that could be removed. I don't have any problem offering people recommendations that are consistent sort of with revealing the history of the building. So not so much as the BAR saying you must, but I have no problem doing that as my staff. So there, I just wanted to offer that.
But if you remove that panel and expose that historic block, the contrast in color between that and the brick, I think, is striking. And if you painted the brick all white, then you lose that contrast.
That's a good point. And just because I don't want to drag this on all night, I guess I just want to see. So Jody, I saw you shaking your head. You're a no. James, I think I'm assuming you're a no.
Yep.
Brick, where do you stand?
I think I would be in favor if the planters are removed, the walls repaired, and we make sure that wall to the east is that it has a consistent, that it's got a single line to it.
Oh, you're talking about that panel that's along the.
No, I mean it can't tell because of the planters, but it looks like there's maybe missing some of the top course of the wall, and that has that little jog and step in the planter.
I see what you're looking at. I see almost like it's faked with the let's see if that's in the image.
Jog.
No, it's all one level if you look at the 1980 photograph.
But and so I would prefer I think the restoration that we've been discussing that would be a little bit more in keeping with the original design. But I think given the application as given, I'd be in support with those caveats.
Tim?
What kind of gets into that whole, I do think somebody could go at this in a more sophisticated fashion, clean the brick, use a darker mortar, do things like that to make the color in the brick come out, remove the boarding or whatever that's over top of the block. So I think there are options to make what's here work a lot better than it does, but I also want to make a mountain of a molehill. I understand what they're trying to do as well. So I'm a little conflicted about it, to be honest.
Well, you want to think longer. Andy, do you have a thought?
It's a drab building, and this will improve how it looks.
Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Ron, you're good. So I think we can make a motion. So the motion will be repair the masonry properly using the correct mortar, remove the planters, and then we are okay with the whitewashing and the painting. We would recommend investigating what's under the green and seeing if that concrete block can be salvaged. Is that fair for everyone who said yes? Okay.
I would just say before you vote, if you don't mind me, just that otherwise we would defer and have an additional conversation with the applicant. I just sort of want to give them, if it's a denial, then give them the opportunity. So that's all I would ask.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah. Well, so the first motion will be for approval If that fails, then yeah, I think we should move for deferral.
Okay.
But we'll see if that passes.
Well, if you've made a motion, I'll second it.
All right, let me find it. Having considered the standards set forth in the city code, including the AGC district design guidelines, I move to find the proposed painting at 1331 West Main Street satisfies the BRS criteria, is compatible with this property and other properties in the West Main Street ADC district. The BAR approves the application as submitted with the following modifications. We would like to see them remove the wooden planters. We would like to see them repair the masonry before painting and repair it properly using the correct masonry mortar. We would recommend that they investigate what's underneath the green paneling to see if the concrete block can be salvaged.
Is there any detail that need to be added about the whitewash? Used the word painting, but
I'm kind of, because it's paint for me. But that's, if others want us to, for those who are going to vote yes on this, if it needs to be a special lime whitewash, I'm happy to make the amendment.
We've used the term, a mineral paint that's appropriate for painting masonry.
I think there needs to be something in there. If we're going to allow them to paint it, there has to be a qualifier that states why we're allowing them to paint it or whitewash it.
Right. So first, I will take Jeff's amendment that the paint should be intended for a mineral paint or something that is intended for use on masonry. And we are making this exception. Who stated this the best? Someone didn't give me an amendment. I don't want to say because I would be willing to tear this building down. I don't think that belongs in our motion.
I think Sherry said it best. I think it's due to the secondary nature of the material on the building and the more contemporary, the more recent brick installation.
Okay, I'll accept that amendment. Jeff, Robert, you guys got all this?
Are we going to encourage them to expose the block work?
Yes. Yeah, that's in the recommendation.
So here's just prevaricating, or whatever you want to call it. But the thing I would say is, when they go to remortar the brick, clean the brick, get it all ready to paint it or whitewash it, I would say that they may find that, in fact, once they do that and they've uncovered that block, they've actually got a pretty nice palette.
They can stop.
So, I mean, I think if you put something in there that says we encourage you to reevaluate your painting, your whitewashing strategy after you cleaned off the block and when everything's clean and fresh before you go and whitewash it.
Correct.
Something to that effect.
With a little bit more sleuthing on the historic street view, that cap is missing on the wall.
It looks like it.
Can we, if you go to the August 2012, it is definitely missing. If that could be repaired and replaced.
The cap on the wall. So there's some.
That's why the planter drops right there.
Oh, okay. So
see, the soldier course just stops.
Yeah, I thought you wanted that removed, just taken off.
Wooden.
The
planter soldier course got blitzed.
Am I able to share my screen?
I'll do it.
You're on Google Drive, Street View, right?
And Street View, but go historic to August 2012.
Sure.
Or October.
Swear there's Carl on his bike.
Is this okay?
That belonged on the sidewalk.
I'm not kidding. My God, it's like you got the shorts and everything.
Yeah, that's not me.
October 2012
is
where
this
I
okay,
am.
Breck? Or
yeah. Yeah, if you zoom in, to the wall on the right side of the stair. It's just missing its cap.
This poor building.
So put a planter there. Ruskin would be rolling over in his grave.
I mean, somebody tried. So you want to see that repaired? Is that what I'm getting at? Or what you're getting at?
Well, yeah. I mean, they're going to whitewash the wall and like
Okay.
leave the cap off the wall.
All right. I will accept that as well.
Just let me make sure I see now what Breck's saying is the wooden planter is simply where that top course was removed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that
the 1x6s were a little bit cheaper than the brick.
Yeah. Oh, and you can actually see the side, which I had not been able to see in any other street views. And so he told me that side was painted. So in fact, it is.
Robert, could you go closer again? Pull in on the brick on the building itself.
Yeah, it's a different brick.
It's a Roman brick. It's a very thin, long brick, very distinctive for the 50s and 60s. Yeah, you're not reading this for the period that it is, and appreciating the things that are distinctive for that period.
Jody, how do you read the brick wall that's a different brick in the front? Do you think that's from a different?
Yes, definitely.
Era?
Yes. Yes.
So what about allowing them to paint or whitewash that sidewalk level wall, but not the brick of the building itself? That's sort of a meet in the middle compromise.
Well, how about we start with this long convoluted motion that we've got, and we see where it goes. And if anybody's changed their mind, then we can try that, or we can just, vote to defer it, or if somebody wants to vote to deny it.
So I'll just be a little devil's advocate here. I bet you that's all brick on a little wall.
You bet what?
Can't understand you.
I bet you that's all soft brick on that low wall. But whatever.
What?
Old soft brick on the
soft brick. Right.
I don't know if paint would even adhere to it. There's some
pretty trash.
I got to tell you, Jody's argument has gotten in my head. Me go back to the whole thing where he said they want to freshen it up. We want to, and Tim, and Breck, sort of referring to the available palette. I mean, there are opportunities to do things here
with what they already have.
With what they have that does not require painting the brick that is exposed. But the fact remains is that they've got a brick wall that's in bad shape. I just be very, very candid. I just don't know. I'm worried about what's in the cards. There's a lot of work, but I'm not saying that's a reason to say whitewash it, but I just have to say Jody's words are stuck in my head now. I'm gonna have bad dreams about them. But I do think that building with those bricks, and then when we zeroed in and see it, a little bit of color on the pieces, the rest of it could go a long way. But that brick really is part of the rest of it. I don't know about the wall. Really, it just seems separate for me. So I just wanted to throw in.
So maybe I'll say I'm willing to whitewash the brick in the front, and I'd say restore the brick on the building and rip the whatever it is on top of that block off.
Can we at least kill the motion that I've made?
Never happened. Never happened.
Well, no, not kill it, but if you're gonna, let's see who's. I still am making that motion. It's gotten long and convoluted, and there's a lot of stuff in it. Hopefully that's been retained. So can we do a roll call? Or do we have a second? Maybe that'll kill it right now. Sherry, you second? Okay. Robert?
Okay, I will call a vote. Yes. Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McClure?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
No.
Mr. Zemer?
No.
Mr. Lehendro?
No.
And Mr. Gastinger?
No.
Okay. All right, so the next motion.
So wait, is that 4-4?
Not pass. It's 4 yes. 4 no. So yeah, if it's split, if it's a tie, that's not passing, or is it?
No, that's not.
Okay. Well, somebody want to make a different motion?
I mean, can I move to defer to next month and hope the applicant shows up?
Second.
I think that's
Okay.
wise.
All right.
Okay.
There's a lot to talk through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to, have a conversation with him about the pieces that you all have laid out here are, it's easy for me to have a conversation with him, and I don't know why they're not here. But sometimes
happens. And I hope you guys understand even if I wasn't going to vote for this, I think it's important that we at least try to see if what the applicant has requested, if that's passable. So,
and we did, we tried.
Yeah, I think Jody pulled on my heartstrings a little bit, and but also the thing that occurs to me is that we're kind of encouraging bad building maintenance behavior by this application but going with the cheapest alternative, and it's clear that this needs a little bit more attention.
I think it also warrants all of us trying to swing by. I mean, we walk by this all the time, I'm sure, but
that's
maybe
fair.
Get hard of it. So the motion anyway.
Yeah, so we had. Okay, and I heard a second from Breck. So I will go ahead and call a vote to defer. Mr. Bailey?
Pass.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. McClure?
Sure.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro?
Aye.
And Mr. Gastinger?
Aye.
Thank you.
That wraps up the regular part of our programming. I got a couple of housekeeping things. So just bear with me for a second. One, Jody, I did get your check, and that's for the church project, the application for, and that's all being done through DHR, correct?
Yes. DHR is administering it for the National Park Service.
Right, and that's the stuff the information that you had sent me last fall, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, same
project.
All right, getting all that straight in my head. We have the question about that railing at the between the court and City Hall, and I do appreciate your comments on that. It is a security recommendation from the police department and the security folks. I don't doesn't seem to be anything sort of people intruding into the courts or anything. It's just simply to keep that alley empty. And I asked about egress, and there's not an egress issue. There is no, actually no exits from the court into that alley. We could even recommend that that they push that thing further back in. It just, I don't think anything. It's not like they're going to yell at me if it takes a while to get to where it'll be approved. But I was hoping it'd be something I could administratively review given its location but
Jeff, could I say something about that?
Yeah.
At the risk of pushing my luck, it seemed to me that the metal fence is a great proposal, better than filling in with something more opaque. The metal is mostly transparent. It's dark, it's black, and recessed. It's clearly distinct from the two brick buildings as a separate element, could be easily reversed. I think it's an appropriate solution for one.
But it doesn't have to have these prison-like arched tops on it, does it?
That is a recommendation. I'm not sure that keeps anybody out. That somebody's nimble enough, but I don't know. I guess if you're willing to clamber up and over a fence next to the police department, but in the images that I sent, yeah, the one has the both of them have the tilted.
This seems unnecessarily hostile to me. I mean, this isn't a jailbreak situation, right? It's just to keep people out of that area. It's just it's just an alley gate basically. I don't see any reason to make it look like it's a maximum security prison. That just seems totally inappropriate to me.
Yeah, I would agree with Tim. Just straight pickets.
And if somebody hops over the fence, it just makes them that easier to catch.
They can make spike. They can hone the top and make real pointy parts out of the top.
Yeah, or I don't know what. Look at all the walls in town that have like the bits and pieces of quartz and stuff sticking out.
Yeah, broken glass and
yeah, broken glass. I think this is fine. What about its depth? Is this the BAR? You all have looked at other. We've seen a lot of this. That court square where they well, actually, most of you didn't, but we saw it also at the church down next to Social Hall. So that there is this. People are wanting to secure things, but I don't know. This is right outside the window of my office where I used to work, 11 months ago, and I don't know. I never saw anybody crawling out of there with their sleeping bag. But it is the depth into the alley would further back be better.
I think the comment that it just needs to be far enough back that someone can't hop it from the low wall by the police station is.
Good point, man. See,
that's far enough.
That's because you're closer in age to climbing stuff than most of us. So
the my concern with it, and I completely agree with Jody. I think what looks like an iron gate is probably the most appropriate thing right there. Some building code issue I am confident is going to come up that if somebody, there's a fire and you crawl out your window to get out of City Hall and you get stuck in there, there's going to have to be an egress hardware on that gate. And they're going to have to design a way that you can't open it from the outside. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how opaque that ends up getting. So it just, you had two images on there. You had the image of the iron fence faux iron fence that, we don't like the curved top on it, but at least that style without the curved top seems appropriate. You also had one that had a kind of a welded wire mesh on it. And I think from a distance, the welded wire mesh, while it does the job of keeping you from getting your hand in there and opening the gate, looks like chain link. And the more it looks like chain link, the more it looks bad. So it needs to look more like an iron fence than a chain link fence.
I mean, I think this is just a sign, don't go in here. So I don't think it needs to be even really all that secure. It just basically says, don't go in here. It's, you know, it's a sign of security. It doesn't have to, you know, I think it swings out, and, you know, if somebody's back there, everybody knows you're not supposed to be back there.
Yeah. Sign should say police canine kettle, you know, that'll keep you out. All right, this is helpful, and I will, I mean, I'm not approving or telling them to do anything. I can clarify with them and then bounce it back towards you guys, but this is very helpful. I did speak with the county attorney. I think we only have one now. And Chip Boyle started yesterday as the city manager, so we'll see how that goes. I'm rooting for Chip. I've known him a long time. I think he's a thoughtful, creative guy, and hopefully, as an employee, brings some, you know, put somebody behind the rudder for us. But I talked to Lisa Robertson on last Thursday and asked about her review of where we are with the COA process. I won't get into the details of her response, but the answer was that what we're proposing appears to be a change to our bylaws, the BAR procedures, and that we should incorporate those into the bylaws, and then she will review the bylaws in their entirety. And that's, so the option to us is to clean that up. And as I explained to her, this is not a new process. This is not a revision to the guidelines. This is not a new ordinance. This is simply clarifying what a practice that we've been doing so that people can understand it. And so we need to get that language finalized, vote to incorporate it into the BAR bylaws, and then I will present it to the city attorney for review. So that's the update on that. Anything else, Robert, that we need to, and I know you all were speaking at the beginning of the meeting about the guidelines, so I'll leave that. I don't have anything to add to that.
Nothing else.
Plus, I know where you all live, so I can ask you questions as you go.
I will say, for anyone interested, the comp plan process is moving along. I think they're about to have the comp plan approved pretty soon. I think it's going to the Planning Commission at their next meeting. Am I right on that, Jody?
No, we're still talking. We'll start talking. Whoops. Okay, you can't hear me. I just got an update today. They're coming back to us with the affordable housing plan. I mean, that's still being hashed out.
Well,
so we're talking about having a future land use get together. That's going to take, oh God, I don't even want to think about that.
Then never mind. I guess it seemed like the public part of that was coming to an end as far as getting feedback, but maybe not. But they are talking about getting into the zoning rewrite pretty soon. I thought, at least from the steering committee, that portion is starting up. But okay, maybe not.
I'll send around the notice I got today that sort of gave an update.
All right. I guess my point was it's probably should be followed if anybody's interested in it. The guideline review, I just want to know I want to form a subcommittee. Who would be interested in reviewing the guidelines? See, Breck. Yeah, I think it's just Breck and I. That makes that very easy. Okay, Breck, we can talk later.
Easy for, yeah.
Well, easy.
I was just going to say easy for public notice too.
Tim raised his hand.
Tim, did you raise your hand?
Well, I'm just going to go to the public notice problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be happy to talk to you each individually about it.
I guess what I was going to suggest is those who are interested, I just wanted to set a, we need to decide on a time when those who are interested would have reviewed the guidelines and made their own notes, so that then we can have a publicly noticed work session. But is it just going to be Breck and I, or Tim, do you want to participate in this?
I'd like to take a look, yes.
Okay. Let me know when you think you could have them have taken a pass through the guidelines and written up some comments. Okay. And then the three of us can all meet together, combine those, and then at some point we can present them to the BAR.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Carl, please keep me in the loop. And I'm not sure if the three of you do meet together, it might need to be like broadcasted like this. In which case we'd probably. Oh.
Sorry. Stupid. Okay. Yes, when the three of us meet together, we will do that through a public process. But I want Tim and Breck to think about how long it's going to take them to review the guidelines and kind of set their own deadline so we can start moving that process forward. And we don't have to do that right now.
I would just say I don't think it's going to be so much because I've already done it one time. I don't think it's so much that it's going to take a lot of time. We just need a deadline.
Do you guys think you could do this before our next meeting?
Definitely.
So you got a month? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm not going to write the lighting part of it this time.
Anything else, anyone?
Well, I know place, I ended up in a different meeting, so I didn't make the place thing, but I know that basically they were going over the letter you forwarded, Carl, to place about the West Main scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not quite sure where Place's mind is as a result of that discussion. No emails have come out since then, but I can check with Andrew Monshine's been kind of on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know as much as anybody as far as what's going on with West Main, which is nobody knows what's going on with West Main.
Well, I'd love to, Jody, do you know if any of those questions were answered by staff to the Planning Commission, or to? I had a bunch of questions about like the cost of the utilities, the gas and the water and stuff.
No, I don't know that they have.
Okay.
No.
Navarre didn't make the meeting either, but he definitely had some comments about that, about the the direction it seemed to be going, for instance. Just as I could just quick, his comment was he agrees with Peter Krebs that we should know what expenditures are needed regardless of the project going forward. Decrease pedestrian, disabled, and bicycle safety that only saves a tiny bit over the baked-in utility, and road maintenance is not acceptable, was his position. We keep kicking the can down the road on a lot of this stuff as a city, it seems. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if for those who have not been following the budget discussions, council is considering taking out a very, very large loan of at least $50 million for the city schools, which would potentially leave us with no CIP for a significant period of time. So that means, I don't know what that means for historic surveys, things like that. I know what it means for what I do on the bike ped committee. But anyway, it's just something that to understand where all this is coming from.
Well, and that school thing is at the Planning Commission review, it was somewhere between 50 million and 100 million.
Right.
So clearly the planning has not, appropriate planning hasn't gone on, and thought hasn't been put into what the schools need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I mean, I was on the county's fiscal impact advisory committee for about, 10 years. You have what one thing I've never, you have a community needs assessment, which is just the long term. And then from the community needs assessment, you then start picking off with your CIP. So, now I can tell you as staff, we've just sort of put our heads down and said, you know, tell us what we get to build or not. It's been, I mean, I'm glad, Jody, you know what's going on, because it really, staff's just like,
I know what's not going on.
yeah.
All right.
So other than that,
yeah, no, if there's nothing else, it's just now 9 o'clock. Or anyone else, or move to adjourn?
So moved.
Great.
thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks.